Hi, everyone. Yeah, beautiful. We have a very, very large group gathered from all around the world. We have our centers in Mexico and up in Utah. I'm sure my friend Kenneth is even there from Cincinnati. We have a big group today, and we're going to take a deep dive into true freedom and happiness and joy. And all of that is just associated with the resurrection in our mind. Not a resurrection of a body, but a resurrection of a mind that has been sleeping and dreaming of exile from God. That's what we've been praying for all along. And even though this is definitely Easter weekend, and we know that these events from over 2,000 years ago have been shared in many different ways, many different passion plays over the century, and of course, I think there's well over 600 Jesus movies in existence, and it's really a focus on the events that happened 2,000 years ago during Holy Week, Palm Sunday, and then yesterday, Good Friday, today, Saturday, Jesus is in the tomb, so to speak, and then tomorrow he pops out like the Pillsbury Doughboy. He's out. He's resurrected. But you know, what does that mean to us right now? What he was teaching was a resurrection of the mind through forgiveness, giving up grievances. You know, he teaches us, my grievances hide the light of the world in me. So anytime we have grievances or judgments or opinions, it just means that we're buying into a cloud of error, a cloud of false belief and false ideas that cover over the light of truth in us, that we are the light, but we've just covered ourselves, and by believing in the ego, we put ourselves to sleep, and we need to wake up. So resurrection is all about waking up in the mind, remembering our divine mind, remembering that we're an idea, Christ idea in the mind of God. And it doesn't really have anything to do with form. You might say that skit, it was a skit that happened over 2,000 years ago, and we're still learning from the teachings of Jesus, but that skit was just a relatively small part of his 3 years of public ministry and of his 30-some years on earth. So that little skit that lasted maybe a week, starting with Palm Sunday and ending up with the resurrection of coming out of the tomb, that skit is a really small little slice of events in time and space. And the main thing as we go into this, I think we all have to have the right framework to really learn this lesson of resurrection. So before I get into this week's movie themes, and before I get into setting up the movie, I thought I would just dip in and read from the Course in Miracles workbook, and it's the workbook lesson 167. And the name of the lesson the title is, There is One Life, and That I Share with God. And just the title, There is One Life and That I Share with God. There aren't multiple lives. We've associated life with the body. We think life begins at birth and ends at death. We think life is biological life. We think life is organic. We've given a lot of false definitions, but all of our definitions involve multiplicity and duality. And what Jesus is teaching us in this workbook lesson 167 is they're all false. There is only one life, and that I share with God. Our workbook lesson, if you're doing them in the calendar of years, the workbook lesson for yesterday was I am spirit. And that's saying the same thing as there is one life. Spirit is life. Spirit is eternal life, and we could say that Jesus is a great way shower, and he's basically pointing us toward the remembrance of eternal life, which is the most important experience we could have. All of our time experiences, including birth and death, seeming birth, these are very temporary little illusions, little wisp of memories that we have retained from the separation. And yet we act and react as if these are real images and that these are real events and occurrences that we're facing every day. I mean, if we were going to be really devoted and sincere, imagine every day if the moment you opened your eyes in the morning and you looked around the room and you went, oh, another day of hallucinating. That would actually be a really good way to start the day, because then you would have things in perspective. You wouldn't be trying to accomplish your to-do list. You just start off with another day of hallucinating. And if that seems too radical for you, then maybe you could try something else, like, eyes open, another day of worshiping death. That's a good one. Because to perceive a fragmented world in place of spirit, in place of eternal life and love and truth, is basically to pursue illusions. And really the goal of our devotion to God is not to pursue illusions, but to relinquish illusions. And how do we do that except by seeing them as illusions? So that's why it would be of great benefit if you open your eyes in the morning, before you get out of bed, before you brush your teeth, before you comb your hair or do anything, wash your face, another day of hallucinating. Oops, maybe that's a good word to throw in there. Oops, another day of hallucinating. Because then there's a context to say, I want eternal life. I actually deserve eternal life because I was created by God as eternal. And this game of images it gets tiring sometimes. You know, it gets tiring, it gets boring, it gets hard, it gets challenging. And all of those things are just coming from believing in hallucinations and almost having like a mirage every day and forgetting it's a mirage and going, oh my God, the problems are starting already. Oh my gosh, what am I going to do here? Got to keep my head above water. So this is what Jesus tells us in workbook lesson 167. There is one life, and that I share with God. There are not different kinds of life, for life is like the truth. It does not have degrees. It is the one condition in which all that God created share. Like all his thoughts, it has no opposite. There is no death because what God created shares his life. There is no death because an opposite to God does not exist. There is no death because the Father and the Son are one. Thank you, Jesus, for helping demonstrate that, giving us a glimpse of that. My gosh, without that glimpse, that could just seem like perpetual darkness. In this world, there appears to be a state that is life's opposite. You call it death, yet we have learned that the idea of death takes many forms. It is the one idea which underlies all feelings that are not supremely happy. Okay. It is the alarm to which you give response of any kind that is not perfect joy. All sorrow, loss, anxiety, and suffering and pain, even a little sigh of weariness, a slight discomfort, or the merest frown, acknowledge death, and thus deny you live. Woo! 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 Hot stuff now. That's hot stuff. That's Jesus Christ stuff. This is like big time, free your mind stuff. I'll just say a few of those things. All it's any response you give response of any kind that is not perfect joy, all sorrow, loss, anxiety, suffering, pain, even a little sigh of weariness, a slight discomfort, or the merest frown, acknowledge death. Okay, this death wish takes many forms. Sneaky, sneaky, sneaky. What? The merest frown, a sigh of weariness, a little discomfort? Jesus is saying there are no degrees to life, eternal life, and there are no degrees to error. Error is error. If you're an eternal being and you have a slightest frown, then what's frowning? Your body. The body's not the truth. So if the body's smiling or the body's frowning, it's just two different forms of death. And we're starting to say we deserve eternal life. That's our inheritance. If God created us eternal, then we must be eternal. It must be a fact if God created us eternal. You think that death is of the body, yet it is but an idea irrelevant to what is seen as physical. A thought is in the mind. It can be then applied as mind directs it, but its origin is where it must be changed if change occurs. Ideas leave not their source. The emphasis this course has placed on that idea is due to its centrality in our attempts to change your mind about yourself. It is the reason you can heal. It is the cause of healing. It is why you cannot die. It is truth established. Its truth established you as one with God. So that's a basic idea in A Course in Miracles. Ideas leave not their source. Christ is an idea in the mind of God, and ideas leave not their source. The Father and Son are one. Fact. Christ remains as God created Christ. Fact. And then, even with regard to this world in our mind, ideas leave not their source. So every time I try to judge a brother or a sister, I'm just reinforcing the idea of judgment and separation in my mind. That's why Jesus said, judge not lest you be judged, because if ideas leave not their source, if I have a judgment or opinion, then it's still in my sleeping mind, and I'm not going to wake up as long as I'm holding on and retaining judgments and opinions and grievances. So obviously Jesus is just saying, change your tune. Come on, sing a happy song, like Stephania's been doing. Sing a happy song, sing a happy song. Every day, sing a happy song. Because we should be praising God and grateful for the oneness and the joy and the love that was given us in our creation. We shouldn't be doing a funeral dirge. And yet when we complain, we're singing a funeral dirge. When we are critical, we're singing a funeral dirge. That they have even Broadway shows. Come on, get happy. We have Broadway shows about being happy, about singing of our joy like the birds. When I listen to the birds, all I hear is happy songs. I really do. Occasionally they're kind of like rock band, like squawks. But most of the birds down here in Mexico, it's like a symphony. When I hear the birds in the morning, I don't need an alarm clock. I get a symphony of melodious birds singing, singing, chirping away. God is wonderful, God is love, so am I, so are you, so is everyone. You know, I could just listen to the birds all day. So if we go to the next one, paragraph 4, death is the thought that you are separate from your Creator. It is the belief conditions change, emotions alternate because of causes you cannot control, you did not make, and you can never change. It is the fixed belief that ideas can leave their source and take on qualities the source does not contain, becoming different from their own origin. Apart from it, in kind as well as distance, time, and form. So that's what death is. Death is just a belief that you can be different than the Creator. That's all death is. It's just a belief you can be different than the Creator. Different than spirit, different than eternal life, different than God's love. And so, wow, this cosmos gives a variety of images to show us. It seems infinite, but it can't be. It has to have a fixed number, but it seems infinite that we seem to keep looking upon forms that are different as long as we believe our identity is different than the identity that God created us as the Christ. Death cannot come from life. Ideas remain united to their source. They can extend all that their source contains, in that they can go far beyond themselves, but they cannot give birth to what was never given them. As they are made, so will their making be. As they were born, so will they give birth. And where they come from, there will they return. So just to give you a summary of this workbook lesson, again, that whatever you're perceiving that you believe is different from you, if you think there's a person, place, a thing, an object that's different from your mind, that's what projection is. You're just seeing things as if they're external to your mind. That's what projection is, just like in a theater. The light goes through the film and then gets projected onto the screen. The world is just showing us what's in our mind. So we don't really have any reason to get upset with the world because it's just showing us what's in our mind. We should be grateful that the world is showing us what's in our mind so we can let go of unreal concepts. And then in the end we find out they're all ego concepts. All of these unreal concepts are just a hallucination, a projection of unreal ideas. And then we don't really want to be content with parading around and masquerading and using a mask of false images and ideas. So today's movie, I actually feel is a spectacular way for us to really drop it. This movie will really help you drop it. Yes, I'm going to show a Jesus movie, probably a movie that some of you have never seen. It's refreshing. And this is going to be a Jesus movie unlike any Jesus movie you have ever seen. I guarantee it. Because this movie is going to be from the Roman perspective. Let's hear it for the Romans. We have not had a movie, a Jesus movie from the Romans' perspective. That's fascinating. You know, we hear it through the apostles and the New Testament, the Gospels, but we have not really had a perspective on the crucifixion and what happened after the crucifixion from the Romans. So I will tell you, first of all, how did we come to this point of showing such a unique Jesus movie? Well, we start off with the themes that you all voted for. The first theme, which got the most votes, is called Deepen in Faith. Spirit takes care of all things in time and space. That's what we need, a movie about Jesus from a Roman perspective that helps our mind deepen in faith to the Christ. Wow, what a different twist. It's Saturday, so we're in the middle of Easter weekend, so he's throwing us a curveball today. He's going to give us the crucifixion and then beyond the crucifixion, the resurrection from an entirely different perspective. Number 2 in the themes, rise above doubt thoughts no matter how they are reflected. Rise above doubt thoughts, no matter how they are reflected. Number 3, keep expanding my mind, going beyond all perceived limitations of the world. Ooh, vast. Going beyond all perceived limitations. Doesn't that sound freeing? Is anybody in here for freedom? Don't you like freedom? I love freedom. I'm all for freedom. I don't want those limitations. Off with the limitations. I cast off the limitations of the mind, of my ego. Number 4, give 100% of myself to given relationships. Given relationships meaning the people that Jesus and the Holy Spirit orchestrate and send to me. Isn't it fun to give 100% of yourself? Give your heart to the given relationships. And when relationships seem to fall away, in terms of the people leave or go, they serve their purpose. They're gone. We're here to use our given relationships. Let's hear it for mighty companions. We love those mighty companions. Flood my awareness with mighty companions. Send in the angels. Send in all the full support. I'm ready to blast off from the gravity of the ego and go soaring into the celestial realms, into the light of heaven. And in the trail of my light, all my mighty companions go with me. We all go together. It's a joyful experience. So, we got one more here. Number 5, feeling alive in the Spirit's extension. That's it. I feel alive. I guess you can tell. You have to feel the joy of lifting up and rising into joy. You have to feel the joy. Even before you fully rise into the joy, you feel the joy in the liftoff. You feel the joy in the destiny. You feel the joy in, this is my life's calling, is to be happy and joyful, truly. Not because of some external events, but because internally I am lit up by Christ. I am lit up by the Holy Spirit. So the movie for today is a 2016 movie, and the movie is called Risen. The theme of our workshop, our whole retreat is Rise into Joy. And the movie Jesus gives us for Rise into Joy is Risen, as in I am risen. That's a strong reminder. I am risen. Rise into joy is not a future prospect. I am risen is the acceptance of the resurrection right now. That's what we're going for. This 2016 movie, as I said, is unique in the sense that as the movie opens during the time of Jesus' crucifixion. But what I like about it is, as the movie opens during this time, we don't even see Jesus. We are introduced to Clavius, who is a Roman tribune, and some of you have heard of Pontius Pilate, right? Pontius Pilate is the one who's the Roman ruler at the time in Galilee from the Roman Empire, Julius Caesar. And basically, Clavius is Pontius Pilate's right-hand man. How fascinating that we're going to watch a movie from basically the perspective of Pontius Pilate's right-hand man. I like it. Jesus, thank you for this. Is going to be fun. We're going to have a fun ride today with Clavius. And you might say that I think this movie has some pretty graphic points in it. I think this movie is kind of realistic of how things actually were. I know a lot of you are not necessarily historians or Bible historians. Before I came over here today to the studio, I was having a milkshake that Lisa had fixed me, and Lisa was fascinated because she's not really been a Bible scholar, and so she was asking me about why did the Jews hate Jesus so much if he was a Jew, and what about the Romans? What are they doing? How are they involved? Well, we're going to get to see in this movie all the political tensions that all of us perceive when we have looked at the world between politicians and kings and queens and governments and all of the frictions that you see in society are projections of the belief in the ego. Why? Because I have but one self, and that I share with God. Why? It's because there is only one life, and that is eternal life. So everything I perceive as the tensions and frictions of the human race and the human condition are just projections of my own belief in separation from God. Does that make sense? So in other words, instead of trying to find a political solution, you say, oh, it's a projection of my mind because I haven't accepted God's will and God's identity that he gave me, you see? So then it starts to get simpler. Like you watched last night from the monastery, you could see all those lovely beings at the monastery working through their intense emotions and then turning more and more to, okay, I need to pray. I need to pray. I need to say, Spirit, Jesus, show me the way, because this personality self is lost. This personality self is wandering in the dust, wandering in time and space, like that old TV show, Lost in Space. It's a very difficult attempt at life. When life is eternal and you're trying to make a temporary life that's make-believe, it's fantasy, it's fiction, and we all know it can get pretty dramatic. It can get really dramatic when we're identified with the body's self. So, in this movie, we are going to start during the time of the crucifixion of Jesus, and we're going to basically start to see what's going on in Judea over 2,000 years ago. It's a Roman occupation, just like Hitler tried to take over the world, just like Napoleon tried to take over the world. Well, actually, the British Empire, the Great Britain, had control of many, many parts of the world. Some have accused the United States of trying to be the policeman for the world, policing all the different countries, you know. Okay, all right, world, you're going to use our currency, all right? Our currency is United States dollars, and you're all going to live by it. And behave yourselves, because if you don't behave yourself, we're going to send in the CIA and we're going to send in some operatives and we're going to make it our way. So this is a world of domination and control. And 2,000 years ago, it was the Roman Empire. And Jesus, I was talking to Lisa. She was saying, so the Catholic Church, I said, no, the Catholic Church comes much later. This is a military, powerful world empire, and they basically are controlling Judea. So the Jews are a very proud people. They have a lot of tradition. They're trying to live according to Yahweh and Jehovah, and live according to the Torah, and really live a godly life, trying to really get to know God. But they're occupied, Galilee is completely occupied by the Roman Empire, along with many other countries. So there's a group of Jews called the Zealots who say, let's get rid of the Romans. We don't like to be occupied. It's similar to what's going on now with Ukraine, and Russia coming in, invading, and the Ukrainians are going, hey, 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 this is our country. Come on now. We don't like being controlled and dominated by another country. This is our country. You can imagine it's the same emotion, the same passion. But even though we've heard a little bit about the Zealots, we're going to see graphically that they are not happy at all with the Roman Empire. And we're also going to see from the Roman perspective that it's hard to control people from another land. It's hard to go out and conquer lands and control people. We can tell that from our own personal lives. Has anybody in here tried to control somebody at one point of your life? How did it go? Wasn't it a disaster? It was for me. It's a complete disaster. I was like, oh man, this is a lesson in humbleness. You can't really control people. In fact, we think we would like to control our own body, but Jesus says, actually, the body's part of a script that's already played out. And when you try to control your weight, and you try to control how beautiful you are, and try to control the body, when you try to personally control the puppet, it's not going to work. You're going to feel guilty, afraid, sad, and you're going to feel like you want to just give up. And Jesus is saying, good, give up. Let the puppet be under the direction of the Holy Spirit, and then your mind will wake up. But don't think you can control any people, even the person that you believe you are. You're not in charge of that one. There's a lot of guilt of believing you're in charge of your puppet. You might have mom guilt or dad guilt. You might have family guilt. You might have ancestral guilt. You know, it's all coming from the ego belief that you can control the puppets. But the puppets are part of a prearranged script that's already over. It is over. And all we can control now is the direction of our thinking. We can either choose to think with the Holy Spirit or think with the ego, and that's it. That's all we have left. Thank God that's all we have left, and that's why we're always training our mind to think with the Holy Spirit and Jesus, because that frees our mind to return to its natural state. So, in this movie, you're going to see some pretty graphic scenes. I mean, it's not only that the Zealots are going to be fighting against the Romans, Romans are trying to control Judea, the Zealots want them to be gone. But when people are out of line, then they don't go to court necessarily. They usually get crucified or crucified upside down. How's that for a quick consequence? You're out of line, get over there, you're going to get crucified upside down or crucified. It's a pretty strong system of you might say, control and punishment and behavior. And so Pilate, we're going to learn a lot more about Pontius Pilate, is he's serving Julius Caesar back in Rome. And he's pretty much concerned in this movie because some of Caesar's spies are coming to check on how things are going in Judea. And he does not want the spies to come and go back to Julius Caesar and say, Pilate's not doing a good job. They're wild. They're out of control. So he's got pressures, self-concept pressures from his superior, Julius Caesar. And we'll see in this movie that our main character, Claudius, he's a tribune, so he's a right-hand man, and he's basically kind of like a general for in terms of the troops and being in charge of the troops, and he's serving Pontius Pilate. And the more we start to go into Claudius's character, we start to realize that even though he's good, he's strong, he's a great warrior, you know, he's really trying to just serve. We're going to find out that deep in his heart, he wants peace. And Jesus is going to reach him. This is one of those great movies where we see Jesus reaching the heart of a Roman tribune and winning over the heart of a Roman tribune and soldier. Now that's got to be a treat. It's one thing to try to win the apostles' hearts. It's one thing to try to win Mary Magdalene's heart. It's one thing to try to win the heart of a few disciples who actually get quite frightened by the events and are more hiding during this movie because this is the crucifixion of Jesus, so they're hiding for their lives and trying to avoid the Romans and trying to avoid the Sadducees and the Pharisees at all cost. But to me, as Jesus says, one heart that turns toward the light is worth everything. One heart that's willing to open up to know the Christ is worth everything. It's not a matter of quantity. We're not here to try to win souls, look at 7.8 billion souls and think we've got to go out and preach on the street corners to try to win souls for Jesus. We're here to let our soul be free in Christ. That's what the goal is. This isn't about numbers. That's what I like about this movie. Show me a movie where one Roman tribune turns to Christ and I'm going to cry because I'm going to go, oh my God, if this soldier can turn to the light, then I have no excuse. I must turn to the light. If a soldier can turn to the light and turn away from battle and all of the darkness of the world, that touches my heart. That's why I cry when I watch this movie. Second thing about this movie, there's a scene in this movie like no scene in any movie that you've ever seen before. You're going to be woo. You're going to feel the awesomeness of this scene because this is a scene that is about transformation of perception. When Clavius sees Jesus as dying and dead, that image goes in his mind. He's dead and gone. But when he sees the risen Jesus, that throws his mind into a change of perception that he can't understand. And you could hear that from the monastery talk last night. A lot of the people were sharing how they were having shifts and changes and openings in prayers like they'd never seen before. They didn't even expect that to happen. It just miraculously happened. And this is going to be, I think, one of the most powerful scenes on the big screen, because you're going to see a Roman tribune faced with something that he would not have predicted in a billion years, a risen Jesus. That is something that is going to strike his awareness, strike his consciousness in the most amazing way. Even every time I watch this movie, I almost have to stop because it just kind of takes my breath away that one scene can change our entire outlook on life. Our whole perspective on the world and everything can be changed by one experience. And that's what we're praying for. So you're in for a major treat today when we get to the point where Clavius sees the risen Jesus. That is a powerful, powerful moment. So I will pop in from time to time. Enjoy it. You're going to be like going on a journey today where it feels like we're actually being taken back 2,000 years, because these events, we can see it from the Roman perspective. It's a pretty intense time. Politically, it's intense. It's intense for the people. And we have the Sanhedrin, who are kind of like trying to hold on for dear life to their rules and regulations and theology. And Jesus, his teachings were kind of the upstart. The Sanhedrin are threatened. The Romans are threatened. Everybody feels threatened, and everybody starts going into major protectionism and major people-pleasing and a wild attempt to protect the past. And then the light of Christ comes whooshing in to say, no, that's futile. Give up. You cannot protect yourself from the light because the light created you and you are light. So all you can do is surrender and give in to the experience of the light. So there's our introduction to our tribune. He's going to be our main character. And that was Barabbas and the Zealots. And you can see that the Zealots are not happy at all with Roman rule. They were rolling stones down from their high position like bowling balls, trying to take out as many in the Roman columns that they could. And you can also see that basically when they capture Barabbas, he says, wait, you Romans are really in for it. The one true God is going to really show you. And that is very much a part of the Jewish Messiah prophecy, is that there will be a Jewish Messiah that will come and he will rule in power and glory and return Judea to the Jewish people and to their glory days. So you can see that even they're slinging insults at each other, where Barabbas is saying, wait till Yahweh gets you Romans. You are going to really pay the price. And then our tribune here, Clavius, says, he says, no, Mars. He prays to Mars. That's his Roman god. So it's like, already you can see the characters are like, my God is better than your God. Oh, you think Yahweh's going to wipe you out? No, Mars will not let that happen. I'm praying to Mars, and you see, my God is better than your God. This has been the problem in all the religious wars, is because God is not known as one. There is just one God, and that God is love. But that God has been forgotten through major amnesia, and now the whole human race throughout the centuries has all been just the rebellion against God's love. And this is what I mean by death worshippers. Everything that's been part of history is a rebellion against eternal love. It's just in the sleeping mind. It's not really in the form. That's just a projection of the rebellion. But the ego, the belief in separation from God, now there's where we have to find the release. We have to forgive the ego. We have to release the ego. We can't use our powerful mind and continue to believe in the ego, because look at the seeming result, the projection of a world where there's wars going on. And you can see, people are always telling me, like they're saying right now, there's the vicious knockdown, drag-out war in Ukraine between Russia and Ukraine. But you can see just this little battle between the Zealots and the Romans is showing you how intense the hatred is. They are really going at each other, not with nuclear weapons, not with MiG fighters and tanks, but they're using shields and throwing, spears, and they're using daggers, and they're using everything available at their time in a knockdown, drag-out fight between the Romans, who have been occupying at this point Galilee for 30 years. So these are the Zealots, and they're basically saying, enough is enough, out. You get out of our country. And then the presence of Jesus is going to come along and is going to say, the battle is not what you think it is. We have a kingdom of heaven within us, and that is our true nature. And our true nature is not conflict. True nature is peace and love and joy. We have a spiritual creator, and this world is a projection of the ego, which is the denial of that creator. So we may pray for world peace, but Jesus is saying beyond world war and world peace is inner peace. And that inner peace is the light that we're going for. Isn't it amazing that we have such a teaching right now of A Course in Miracles to clarify this for us? That it's not about who God's chosen people are. It's everyone is chosen eventually to answer the call. And Jesus tells us, all are called, few choose to listen. Well, hallelujah for the ones that are starting to listen. That's a reflection of my mind. I'm every day I wake up and I have so many correspondences with people all over the world that are just sending me love letters. They're just so happy. They're just so happy to find that there's such a thing as eternal life, and that all they have to do is forgive the world, and then that they can remember the eternal life, That's precious. So that's a good start for our movie. We can start to see the intensity of conflict and battle is a projection of the death wish in the mind. And that's why I said, when you wake up in the morning, wake up with, oh, another day of hallucinations. Let it be different today. Another day of death worshiping. Let my heart worship the Lord thy God of love instead of death today. Instead of diversity, let me worship union. Instead of variety, let me worship singularity, harmony, joy, love, happiness. Let me worship joy and experience joy instead of giving my mind over to this death wish. So there we go. We're getting a close-up of Good Friday. Jesus says from the cross, it is finished, and then the tremor comes and literally this thing starts shaking, buildings start cracking and everything. And our Clavius has been told by Pilate, go, he's washing his hands in the pool. He's trying to wash his hands of what he's had done, of the crucifixion, and he's saying, go finish it. Like, I've had enough of this. I've had enough of this resistance and rebellion from the Jewish people, and the Sanhedrin were here, and I'm had enough of this. It's like Pontius Pilate's like saying, like, this is giving me a headache. This is hard doing my job here. I'm unwelcome and unloved. And so when Clavius gets there, you can see there's a lot of wailing, crying. There's a Roman centurion there saying the mob knows something's not right about this. And then basically, as is custom to try to speed up a crucifixion, someone who's been hanging on the cross, they break the legs. So both of the other ones that are there with Jesus, they break the legs of both of them. People scream and shout even more. And then when they're going to break Jesus' legs to speed up the dying process, Clavius is told his mother's here. And then he says, hold it. So we start to see in Clavius that he's just like, he gave a good long stare to Pilate when Pilate said, I had to crucify him. He just gave a stare like, really, is this necessary? On top of everything. Killing someone who's called the Jewish Messiah, you really, is this necessary? And now when it's to breaking his legs, Jesus' legs, he says, hold it, stop. And he's now asked them to use a spear into the lungs because it's quicker. And he's been told again by the prefect, by Pontius Pilate, make sure that Jesus is dead. So here's a Roman tribune who's trying to do what his boss is telling him to do, fight battles for Rome and Tiberius Caesar, and now in this case go and make sure that Jesus is dead. But you can see that he's already showing resistance. When he finds out Jesus' mother's there, he says, hold it. That's excessive. When he's feeling a lot of things. He felt the crucifixion was excessive, but he's trying to do his job, as as this Roman, and he's working as a right-hand man for Pontius Pilate, and he's trying to do his job. It will soon, we will start to see what he has deeper motivations, like we all do. None of us really deep down feel we need to be into hatred. We all feel there has to be a better way. Every human being who's ever lived, I know, has had a moment where they thought, there has got to be a better way. There has to be a better way. Because there's something inside of us that is spirit, and it's who we really are. So we're going to see again the final scenes, but this is Good Friday. This is we're seeing the scenes of Good Friday at the start of this movie, which is going to show us a very different angle. We're going way beyond Holy Week now, because we will go through the crucifixion, inform the resurrection, and beyond, much beyond that. And that really relates to all of us, because we're not living through the scenes of the crucifixion, even though watching it, it can seem like living through it. But basically, we're calling and we're praying for connection to Christ, the presence of Christ right now. And Christ is with us right now. So he's wanting us to use this movie to forgive our belief in separation for once and for all, and to come unto the Lord, come unto God, even though we can see that some of these scenes are quite intense from the ego's perspective. You can see for these Romans, this is another day at the office. They're like, okay, even before the one man passed away, they're got the pliers in hand. It's like a job. Okay, let it go, let it go, let it go, and then, okay, and get the pliers out, and let's get the spikes out of the arms, and then we got to drag the body and dump it in an open grave. This is really showing us Good Friday. We haven't seen this kind of angle, but this is from the Roman perspective. They basically are trying to rule a group of people, the Jews, and they're basically, it's a rough attempt to control a group of people from afar. Literally, they've been occupying Judea, Galilee, there for, we'll say 30 years is what the movie said, and now they're just trying to finish the job, and then on to the next day and the next challenge. It's what sometimes we feel these challenges psychologically and sometimes physically with symptoms. That's a lot of what we talk about is when body symptoms appear, but you can see this is extreme. This is what they're dealing with. They're dealing with this type of punishment and death, and then disposing of the bodies. So now we're going to see, some of you know, Nicodemus of Arimathea is very famous. He's a very wealthy Sanhedrin who's there, a very religious man who has followed Jesus and adores Jesus. He's also a very wealthy man, and he's going to come up and petition and plead and say, please let me handle the burial of Jesus. I have my own grave. I have my own grave. So basically I can do it. And that is really what we read about in the Gospels of Nicodemus. Nicodemus has also been there in the earlier Gospels when Jesus is talking to him. He's the one I mentioned yesterday where Jesus said, you must be born again and again to enter the kingdom of heaven. And Nicodemus said, does that mean I have to enter my mother's womb? You see, he's just a religious man who follows Jesus and who's really trying to grasp what Jesus is talking about, his teachings. And here he will be coming now to the scene to say, please, I beg of you, I want that body because I want to take care of the burial. So the two women that we've seen right there in two scenes, that's Mother Mary and that's Mary Magdalene. That's the two Marys right there. It looks like Mary Magdalene is consoling Mary, the mother of Jesus. And then you can see that as soon as the tribune says, yes, let these other men bury the Nazarene, you can see how quickly the two run off. It's a job for them. You know, they scurry right away, almost like, okay, my job is done for the day, go find your centurion. And so when we consider things like death of the body, you can see they're really seeing it as just part of their job. They're just trying to do their job, and then they're on to the next thing. Very quickly they scurry away from the cross and Jesus. Now what Jesus right now wants us to realize is we have to begin to open our minds to the unreality of the body. I read to you from 167 where he said that death is an idea, it's an idea in the mind, regardless of what seems to happen physically. The death actually has nothing to do with the body at all. Death is a belief in the mind, and it can only be healed by releasing the belief in the mind. You see how sneaky the ego is. It's just projected an entire world of events, and it's projected the body, and it's projected the concept of birth and called that the beginning of the body, and then it's projected the end of the body to be death. And what Jesus is really saying throughout the Course, especially in the lesson I just read, 167, is it is an idea in the mind, and it has absolutely nothing to do with what's going on physically. So this is, in one sense, just a mirage of images. And when you say, I want to forgive the ego, you have to be willing to let go of the interpretations of time and space. You have to let go of the belief in events. You have to let go of the belief in people. You have to let go of the belief in countries. You have to let go of the belief in professions, careers. You have to let go of the belief in linear time, because God did not create linear time. Linear time is an invention of the ego, past, present, future, and even in the Course in Miracles, Jesus says, the ego tries to force continuity on time. Force continuity. Force the connection between past and present, future. What we have believed to be just the way things are, Jesus is saying they aren't that way at all. That the ego invented linear time and it forces continuity onto them. Think of that word though, continuity. I like to think of continuity as love. I like to think of continuity as the present moment. I like to think of continuity as connection to spirit. That's what true continuity is. But the ego's version of continuity, which is false, is to try to force its own beliefs and its own projections onto past, present, future. And yesterday when I was doing the session, I remember that man Bob was on there saying, wow, yeah, he said, we really do, my wife's behind me on the couch, but we really need to look at this thing of time. Oh, yes, we do. That's what those workbook lessons are designed to do for your mind, is free the mind from the belief in linear time. And if somebody came along and said, love you one another, we would all go, yay! If they said, you have to let go of grievances, yay, I want to do that. And you have to let go of this linear progression that you call life, you call biological life. It's like, oh, whoa, that's deep. You want me to forgive linear time? Yes. Jesus is saying that's how you reach God, because the ego is just a belief in the mind, and it's hiding in the unconscious mind. But until you go and face the darkness, until you face the shadows, like Carl Jung said, until you face the ego in your mind, then you will still be playing out its game by default until you release it in the mind. When we look at little children, I see Stephania there with her little girl. We love how little children play. They're in the moment, they're so joyful, they're so happy, they are playing like there's no care in the world. And that is a good representation of the present moment. The present moment is playful, it's joyful, it's gleeful. It doesn't have any heaviness to it. It's purely light, it's lighthearted. It's funny, it's humorous, it's so wonderful, but it is covered over in awareness by the belief in linear time. So in the end, when people start to meditate and pray, and then they become so involved in prayer and meditation that they start to forget about the world, that's where you're really making your progress. The more you can really forget about the world, like Jesus says in the Song of Prayer, the secret of true prayer is to forget the things you think you need. Wouldn't that be wonderful if you weren't thinking about bills, if you never had to think about money, if you never had to think about hunger, if you never had to think about thirst or shelter? Wouldn't that be fun? That would be gleeful. And that's what Jesus is saying, come into the present moment, because that's how you release the ego. He basically told us, I'm calling you out of the world. I'm calling you to the kingdom of heaven within, is basically the message. So thank you, Jesus, for giving us this new perspective as we're watching pretty graphic, these are pretty graphic crucifixion scenes. These are not the typical versions we see in some movies. These are like extremely graphic from the Roman perspective. We're getting more of a realistic Roman perspective here, so we can forgive it. We can really let it go. Yeah. Here you go. Starts off with, what do you want? First he says, you know, you and I share the same path, and look at the look that Claudius gives to Pilate. You and I are on this, we share the same path. He gives him a look without denying it. He just gives him a look like, no, we aren't. And then when Pilate sees that look, he said, your ambitions are well noted, but why do you want ambition? To go back to Rome? What's that for? For power? It comes back to wealth. And then, why do you want wealth? To have a good family in the countryside. Okay, now you can see the Christ starting to know that this I can work with. And then, but why the country and the family side? To find the end of travail, a day without death. Oh my gosh! We can now see underneath this tribune is he wants peace. He wants a day without death. That's what his underlying motive is. And you know Jesus is going to take note of that. It doesn't matter, Roman, tribune, the form doesn't matter to Jesus. It's just when the prayer of the heart is a day without death. Here we go. You know there's going to be some healing occurring. There's going to be some movement in the mind. The miracle of the mind can get activated when the prayer is for the end of travail, for peace, for a day without death. That's what we're praying for. We're actually praying for a day without death. We want to be free of the ego in our mind, and that is the death wish. That is our prayer. So here, even in this movie, that's what I love about this movie, is because it's not so focused on the teachings or the events that happened 2,000 years ago. It's the call for love deep inside the heart. And our mind is so powerful. You can see that's going to set in motion a lot of amazing miracles and witnesses for Clavius, because he wants a day without death. And that's what we're praying for. So now, suddenly, our minds can link in with the main character. even though he seems to be a Roman tribune, we're seeing now, wait a minute, Clavius wants the same thing that I want. And you see, like Kenneth Clifford was talking about last night when he was talking in the monastery, saying every expression session that he sees, he says, it's all me. It's me crying out for love. It's me. You see how different it is when you see your brothers and sisters as your own call for love. Not their issues, but your own call for love, to remember God, to remember the love of God, to remember Christ. That's really what it's about. And that's how we wake up. So here we go. So you can see how the ego made this world. Even when now Jesus has been crucified, he's been put in the tomb, and the Sanhedrin are not satisfied. Because even though the Sanhedrin is saying, we want the same thing that Rome wants, that Caesar wants, we want peace, that's the last thing that they really want. Why would you conquer and fight and defend countries if peace was your goal? You see, it's the ego always speaks out of two sides of its mouth. It always has an agenda. It always has something. In this case, there's a fear coming now in the Sanhedrin because they don't want the body of Jesus to be gone from that tomb, because he had said he would rise in 3 days. And the rumors have spread now, so for them, this is again a threat to their self-concept, a threat to their piety, to their pride. And of course, Pontius Pilate is all, you can see it on his face. He doesn't like his job. He feels under the pressure and the threat of Caesar, Tiberius Caesar in Rome. And so they say they want peace, but that's like many politicians and in the world that say, yes, we want peace. Well, you have to really mean it in your heart. You can't use the word peace as a part of another scheme. So basically we are now seeing the Sanhedrin and Pilate, because they're both feeling threatened, like they could lose their status, their position, they will now start to make a cover-up story. And to prevent the actual whatever they are afraid of happening, they're afraid that the apostles and the followers of Jesus will steal his body. And from the Roman perspective, we put a giant stone there. I mean, what do you want? We want a seal. It has to look like you have sealed, you have verified and confirmed that this stone will stay there. Nobody will go past this stone. So this is showing again how the ego works. The ego is so afraid that it has to use all kinds of stories, lies, and schemes and cover-ups to cover it. It's just a belief in the mind, but it's using time and space to be such a distraction, because there's nothing honest about a death wish. A death wish, if you believe in it, it will do, you give it power to basically enact the belief in death, to project a world of form that just enacts the belief in death over and over. But the only way out is to forgive the belief in death. You can see there's no action you can take in form that will provide an escape. And haven't we tried? Haven't we tried to live the best life that we can? Haven't we tried to make the best decisions we can, to find peace and happiness and joy in terms of the forms? We've tried, but the ego is in the last place you would ever look to find it, the unconscious mind. And that's why it's called unconscious. It's out of awareness. It's a belief that is hidden out of awareness. Okay, here we go. So you can see Clavius is curious. He's very thorough. He goes to the site and investigates, and he sees the splintered rope that seemed to have just burst. When something bursts, it's different than a clean cut. And then, were you drinking? No. And then he pulls out the flask. So he's very much aware that there's this cover-up going on now. A major cover-up with the Sanhedrin, fabricating all kinds of stories for protection, for pride. But other than that, too, you can see where he's being sent. He's being sent down a road to, he must find the body now. And this is the problem of the world. When there's a murder mystery, the whole investigation is to find the body and find out the perpetrators. In any investigation, when the pandemic came out, after it had just spread seemingly over a few months, right away the question was, how did it start? Trying to trace it back to, was it at an animal place where there's lots of animals in China? Was it a lab experiment in China? You see, looking for the cause and form, in this case, looking for the body of Jesus now this is an ego tactic. But this is no different than when you go to a psychic and say, I want to tell me who my soulmate will be. What's the name of that body that I'm going to meet sometime in the future that's going to make my life all right? You see, it's the same thing. When we look to form and form outcomes, it's because we believe the form outcomes are important and that we believe there's causation in form. And Jesus is teaching us, no, only the mind is causative. There's no causation in anything in form. That undoes undoes Newtonian physics. It undoes everything, because we've been tricked to believe that there are forms and consequences, causes and consequences in form. And Jesus is trying to help us see that this is where our misery is coming from. We're looking outside ourselves for the truth. And here is a great example. There is this fervent now search for the body of Jesus. But it's not for the correct motive. Of course, it's for the agenda. Everybody's trying to protect their positions, the pride to find the body of Jesus. But even on the spiritual search, this is where the mind can get hung up in searching for Jesus the man. But the Christ is spirit. And that's why he told us the kingdom of heaven was within. Don't look for me in form, and you don't have to replicate what I went through. You don't have to go through a crucifixion yourself. It's all about the resurrection of the mind. And if you study non-dual spiritual pathways, they all point to, we must find that perspective in the mind that's non-dual, that's pure peace, that's pure stillness, that's pure love. That unified awareness is the correction in the mind. And it cannot be found in form. We have to give up this obsession for the body. I mean, if you look at like the planet Earth, look at all the dating sites trying to find your better half. There is no better half. You are whole. You can give up the search for the better half because there aren't any halves to find. Behind every great man is a great woman. Behind every great woman there's a great man. Oh, come on, get off it. Let's find the Christ. For Christ's sake, let's stop pursuing outside of ourselves and looking. Oh, what are you doing? Well, I've been on the dating site. Oh my gosh, put your resume out there and go searching for love. And Jesus keeps saying, it's not outside of you. It's not out there. And but out there, he means by form. He's basically saying God didn't create the form, and if you obsessively go after the form, you're looking to find your happiness, peace, and joy in idols. In idols. What did the Ten Commandments say? Hold no idols before the Lord thy God. Oh my gosh, we got to go all the way back to the Ten Commandments to say, oh my gosh, it's been there all along, teaching us to love God and to love our neighbor as ourselves. That's how we realize our true joy. So now Claudius is still trying to follow his superiors. Now the superiors are saying, find me the body of Jesus. And you know what though? Jesus is even deeper still, because Jesus knows Claudius's heart. He knows that he wants a day without death. He knows he wants peace. And that's what counts, is what you want deep down in your heart. Even if you seem to have a position of tribune where you have to be at the beckoning of the call of the prefect, of Pontius Pilate, deep down, the prayer of his heart is he wants a day without death. He wants the end to travail. So this is such a great movie, because we can look at this and we can go, what a bizarre thing is going on now. There's a manhunt, a search for the body of Jesus. And this is after Jesus has been crucified. So that body is decaying somewhere, and it's smelling, and yet there's a manhunt, a search for that. And how we can relate to that is how we have searched for things in form. I'll be happy when I get a diamond ring. I'll be happy when I get retirement, a gold watch for retirement. I'll be happy when I can go back to my homeland. I'll be happy when they elect a new president. You see, it's ridiculous to look to the form and expect the form to change to find happiness. That is the ego's trick. Something in form has to change and I'll be happy. And then the Holy Spirit's saying, no, just change your mind right now and you'll be happy. It's much easier than that. The form is irrelevant, actually, we can see, because when you have a change of mind, you have a change of purpose. And when you have a change of purpose, la-di-da-di-da-di-da, watch the world light up when you have a change of purpose, Oh, the stock market's up, la-di-da-di-da-di-da. Stock market's down, la-di-da-di-da-di-da. Oh, a war started, la-di-da-di-da. Oh, they just signed a peace treaty, la-di-da-di-da. You're not going to buy the effects. In A Course in Miracles, Jesus says, the Holy Spirit looks not to effects, for he has judged their cause. Meaning, the Holy Spirit has already overlooked the ego. He knows the ego is a false belief. So why is he going to be looking at the projections of the ego? He's not interested in the projections. And if we want to be happy, we have to become just as disinterested in the news. Which I had a friend, Kathy of mine, she said, I don't think it's the news, it's the olds. She said, she called it the olds. I said, yeah, that's it. I'm not going to spend any time on the olds anymore. I'm interested in being born again now. So let's keep watching here, but it's getting interesting because Claudius is he's doing his job, but we know what Claudius really wants because he told us in the pool. That last scene is so full of stuff too. So he's looking for a body. He's looking for the body of Jesus. So that was a Jewish grave that the Romans were digging up. If you are trying to keep the peace in Judea, the last thing you would ever do, if you really wanted peace, would be follow this crazy body hunt, which the Sanhedrin and now the Romans are like sucked into it. But you saw all the women and the families screaming in the back there as the Romans are digging up a Jewish cemetery. That is not in line with the Torah. If you wanted to, there's some basic rules. You shouldn't carry something and do some work on the Sabbath and everything. But if you want to really tick the Jewish people off, just go and dig up their graves of their family members. You see now, the Romans probably didn't even think twice. They gotta find the body, gotta find the body. And they're into more like the Indian practice of the funeral pyres. They're into cremation. Cremation is not allowed in the Torah. You can't kill people that way. You have to bury them. And the worst thing you can do after they're buried, you have to leave those bodies alone. Dun, dun, dun. You know, you better, Pink Floyd knows, you better not go digging that out. So you can see how ridiculous the ego is. When there's fear and people start acting out of fear, like Pontius Pilate, he crucified Jesus because he was afraid of the spies coming from Tiberius Caesar and basically saying, oh, you're not doing a good job keeping the peace. So to quell the unrest, he gave a choice, you know, who do you want to crucify? The crowd screams, Jesus, the mob, crucify him. But you see, you know, sometimes people say, David, why are you always talking about people pleasing? Can you see the people pleasing in this movie? Pilate is people pleasing Caesar. The Sanhedrin are doing everything they can to keep their status and position. They're not really devoted to God. They're devoted to theology and tradition and rules and regulation. They're just trying to keep their power. And you can see it's just layers after layers after layers of people pleasing. How does it apply to us? We have to look at our own lives. We have to look what seem to be our lives in this world, because the only life is in heaven, is eternal life. But we have to look at people pleasing with family members, with jobs, with all the roles that we have. Even if you are active in a religion, you know, you have to watch out for people pleasing in the religion, because that is what keeps us from really tuning in to letting our yes be yes and no be no, like it says in the Bible. We can't reach God unless we're willing to follow the Holy Spirit and release all the people pleasing in our life, because that's the sneaky way that the ego keeps the mind asleep. And you can see it in this movie. It's just layers upon layers of people pleasing. That's us. We are the seeds already cast. And to the ego we say, you're too late. The seeds have been released. These bodies are just messengers of the truth, of God's love. These puppets are going to be letting the Holy Spirit and Jesus put the words in them. The seeds have already been released. You are too late, she says. Because you see, he was very sarcastic. He was denying that she had heard Jesus' voice, and she had. And she didn't need eyesight to convince her of her Lord. She said, he loved me. He loved me. And that's the love that Jesus has, that Christ has for us. And if you want to think of your body as a communication device, yeah, that's good, go ahead. And if you want to think your body even better is just a seed that's been cast by Christ to bring fruit, to bring to life the awareness of the Christ presence. That's right. If you get questioned by your husband, your wife, your partner, who do you think you are? Just say, the seeds have been cast. It's too late. I have been cast for the Christ. We are being cast today on Easter weekend. We are being cast to go forth and shine the light of truth. We are being cast to shine our light because we need to teach what we would learn. In order for us to accept ourselves as the Christ, we have to first be willing participants to be used by the Christ, to let the Christ come through us. And then we feel the joy coming into our heart And then we can say in our hearts, I have seen him. Like Mary Magdalene said, to the apostles after she saw him in the upper room, I have seen him, meaning he is alive and well. And this is true right now. He is with us right now. He is with us right now, and those seeds have been cast. And there's no pulling them back. The seeds have been cast, the seeds have been planted, and they will germinate into lots of reflections of love and joy wherever we seem to look. That's how our perception is changed. We start to see the witnesses of God's love every direction that we look. Okay, now he's starting to interrogate, and this is I just love this part of the movie because soon he's going to find a follower of Jesus named Bartholomew. And when you are brought before men and women and you are asked to testify for what is in your heart, I can't think of a better example here than Bartholomew in this movie. He's going to come in there and he's going to witness for the truth, and he doesn't hold back. He's not afraid if he's speaking to a Roman. He doesn't care. He's just going to speak the truth. What a witness for all of us. We've talked about Mary Magdalene. We've talked about Peter and James. We've talked about all of them. Today, Bartholomew rises up for all of us and shows us how it's done. So we've just scored on theme number 2. Rise above doubt thoughts, no matter how they are reflected. And do it with love and laughter. Do it with the freedom in your heart. He says, just tell me the truth. and this is great. The tribute is like, just tell me the truth and you're free to go. You give me your word? Yes. Where are his followers? They are everywhere. The seeds, as the blind woman said, the seeds have already been cast. It's unstoppable love. It's unstoppable love. The good news of the Gospels is that God is love, and nothing can really keep you from knowing God's love. Nothing can keep you from knowing God's love. And look at Bartholomew. How's that for a witness? He goes joyfully out the door with arms raised, like he has given the full testimony. They are everywhere. Christ is everywhere. It's unstoppable love. It's unstoppable love. And that's the way that you are to go towards proclaiming the good news. Don't believe what you learned in the past. Don't believe what you seem to learn from the ego, the culture. Don't believe whatever the religious things were, even philosophies. In the end, you've got to cast aside all theologies, all of them, not just one or more. Cast aside all the theologies, all the philosophies, and come to the present moment. And that's what Jesus meant by the kingdom of heaven is at hand. It's so close because it's in this present moment. Only the belief in time can seem to veil it, but time isn't real. Why would we think that the will of God, to know God's love, would take time? That's just another trick of the ego to try to keep us distracted from the present moment. But the kingdom of heaven is at hand. So to me, that's one of the most heartwarming scenes in the movie, to see Bartholomew profess his heart with a big smile on his face, like, oh, thank you for asking, and then thrust his arms in the air and then go flying out the door. He answered from the vertical. He was asked a horizontal earth plane question, and he answered from the vertical. They're everywhere. And you see, when you line with the vertical, then you feel that happy. You have the biggest smile as Bartholomew. Okay, now he's seen basically, he saw Jesus in a dream, open his eyes up with the cross above the water. Then he heard Mary Magdalene say, "You're looking in the wrong place." Wow, the witnesses are coming in strong now for the tribune, for Clavius. And then now Bartholomew. And Bartholomew is almost telling him, just give up your search. You're searching for the body of Jesus, and the followers and the Christ are everywhere. So give up your search in form. So here we go. It's going to start really kicking in now. Now we're getting to the good part of the movie. So there he is praying again to his Roman god Mars, because you could see his eyes, the tribune's eyes, when the man was speaking. And it's actually, as I've traveled around the world and talked to so many people in so many countries, sometimes they will confess that they've had mystical experiences where they've had like direct contact with the light. And they always say that there was some fear associated with it, and that when they tried to tell their family or friends, they were met with ridicule and disbelief. So they decided to not speak it, or to tell another story, because people wouldn't believe what they were sharing. And this just shows how when the mind's asleep and dreaming, and it so much believes in the darkness, that when you do even have a ray of light, you have a glimmer of that spectacular light, then the fear is by the ego backlash is very intense, and oftentimes people will just try to forget it, pretend that it never happened, or they will try to make up a story to cover it. Much like the Sanhedrin were told what happened, and then they said they already had a story in their mind of what would be the story to tell. So it immediately they said, no, here's what happened. I'll tell you what happened. And this is how it works in the mind. Even when you have your heart opening and mystical experiences, the ego can come into your mind and say, that didn't happen. Or tell no one what you just experienced, because no one will believe you. But I know in my life I've had so many, just floods and floods and floods of these kind of out of pattern, or call them mystical experiences, that they're very convincing. They're actually very convincing. And one is convincing, but anything more than one, it just grows more and more convincing that the world is not what it seems to be, and things are not what they appear to be. And even my grandmother Lillian, when we would have these heart-to-heart talks, she would talk about, the night that her mother died. Her mother seemed to have pneumonia, or lungs filling up with fluid, and her breathing got very heavy. But then, right at her mother's passing, she basically told me that she looked, and her mother appeared to her as a vision, and her mother was very young, and she was wearing a beautiful dress, and she had a beautiful smile, my grandmother said, a beautiful smile on her face. And then she was in like a multi-level house. She said she watched her mother kind of float over to a door where the attic steps were, and she went past through the door, and then she went up the steps. And so when I was growing up, it's great that even I had a grandmother telling me of her visions of, you don't have to be afraid of death. Things are not what they seem to be. Even that is part of reflections and witnesses we get, to fear not. The death is not what you are afraid of. You're really afraid, Jesus is telling us, of the light. Because of the identification with the ego, there's a fear of the light. But once we start to give way and let the darkness come up and be released, then we actually start to open ourselves, like I did, to 3 revelatory experiences, which were direct contact and direct immersion into the light, and then the world disappeared. I got to witness 3 different times the disappearance of the universe as everything went light. Not the kind of light of the physical eyes or the physical world, but the light of all-knowing, the light of unspeakable love, the light of the I am presence and God. So we can see here progressively that Clavius is basically getting witnesses and more witnesses and more witnesses, to the point you could see his eyes when this man, one of the guards, was telling him what he really experienced, that Clavius's eyes are riveted. And then you can see the man saying, maybe my story was true. He's afraid of what he saw. And he's hoping that he can use this story to give his mind some kind of recognition or comprehension of it, but it's very frightening because it's so different. It's just different than the whole linear plane. The horizontal plane is like a piercing of the veil. So we're getting to the point now where Flavius is getting closer and closer and closer to the surrender moment, where he will reach a point where he actually has no choice but to completely surrender into a different perspective. And so here we go. Hold on to your hat, because Kansas is about to go bye-bye, as they say in the Matrix. Okay, so Clavius leaves a love note. I have seen 2 things that do not reconcile. That's for us right now, because what Jesus tells us in the Course is you have 2 purposes in your mind. One is of the ego, and one is of the Holy Spirit. And these are the 2 things ultimately that we can't reconcile. We can't reconcile death with eternal life. We can't reconcile that we are creatures of time born to die, and that God created us perfect, and that we live in God forever. But that's how we wake up from the world, not by analyzing the world, not by chasing forms, which Clavius showed us. He chased and chased with great passion. He interviewed the followers. He dug up Jewish Hebrew graves. I mean, for God's sake, he gave his heart to try to find the body of Jesus, and it only led him to having a dream of Jesus where Jesus opened his eyes, and then Mary Magdalene told him, you're looking in the wrong place. Bartholomew witnessed the joy of God, they are everywhere. And then finally, when he goes through the door, now he starts to short circuit. And this is what happens on the spiritual journey. You can't just keep reading the Course for decades and try to say, I want to learn how to get this intellectually. I meet so many people around the world, and when I meet them and I'm sitting there in a living room, they say, wow, this Course in Miracles, I just can't wrap my head around it. Jesus doesn't want you to wrap your head around A Course in Miracles. He wants you to dive so deeply into the practice of it, the daily experience, the deep meditations, we saw that with the monastery last night. You could see it on the faces of all the ones that came up there. For those of you who are in the academy, you saw the faces of those whose hearts were being changed. Just through prayer, just through the power of prayer. My watch is talking to me now. No, I don't need you, I'm good. Just through the power of prayer. No artificial intelligence needed here. So basically, you start to realize that this is what you do not want to say, I want to understand the Course intellectually because that's like chasing down the wrong road again. You can't understand the Course intellectually because the Christ will undo all intellectual concepts. You can only come with all your heart, all of your heart, to say, love, I want to know you, love. I want to know myself as love. I want to know everyone and everything as love. And that desire is what awakens the mind, not practicing the form and sticking with the form. In the end, we do have to have our Clavius moment where the love of God comes upon us so strong that all we can do is think along the wall, like in Solaris with Chris Kelvin. When the light got so strong in Solaris and the little boy, all he could do was sink against the wall. And here, Clavius, all he can do is sink into the wall, and his back just slowly slides down the wall until he comes to rest on the floor with total release on his face, like, oh my gosh, everything I've ever believed is not true. You saw that look in Clavius's face. And then Jesus just disappeared shortly after that because it was all that was necessary. All the apostles, Mary Magdalene got to see him briefly, and then Clavius got to see him, and then that was all that was necessary. Now they're all kind of off to go, I think, to Galilee. They're taking a trip now, as Mary Magdalene had told them that Yeshua had appeared to her and told them that. So to me, that's what this movie is all about. It's actually just giving your mind permission to say, well, whatever I believed in the past, I'm not going to let that hold me back now. Whatever I believed about my career, about the laws of this world, about my previous encounters with people, whatever memories I had of the past, I would rather be born again anew and let the Spirit come into my heart and guide and direct my every thought, word, and action from this point on. No going back into retrospective thinking. Oh, in retrospect, I could have done this and this different. No, you couldn't. The script is written. Everything is always perfect, exactly as it is. There is no better or worse in terms of form. That's the hard thing for the mind. The ego can't stand to hear that there is nothing better and worse in form. But if you believe in better and worse, you will pursue the better, and you will try desperately to avoid the worse, believing that you can tell the difference. You see? That's why the first lesson of A Course in Miracles is nothing I see means anything. He's giving us the key, the gateway to remember the kingdom of heaven by telling us, no, don't think you know what that meant in form. You need the Holy Spirit to give you a clean, fresh, clear interpretation from the present moment. But don't think you know. Don't think you know. And then you'll find yourself just indescribably happy. The struggle is just trying to believe that you still do know something. You see? That's the self-concept. I call that the I know mind. You know, when people come and they go, well, this much I know, and then you see the finger go up and it's like, well, actually, there's going to be a collapse of that knowing, that false knowing. And good. You know, what's the old nursery rhyme? Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men could not put Humpty back together again. Well, hallelujah for that. You know, we've got the row, row, row your boat. We got Humpty Dumpty. Jesus is coming through even the childhood rhymes. He's coming through everywhere. It's unstoppable. And all we have to do is give way to it, yield to it. Just say, okay, I say yes to the love. So, okay, let's see what Clavius is doing now. I don't think he dropped that sword. You see that when he went back inside that room, that sword just dropped thump onto the ground, because I think he suddenly had a case of deep curiosity and nonviolence overtook him. So let's see what happens. There's a little pray, listen, and follow. A little pray, listen, and follow there. At first, all his words from the shore, any luck, and then try the right side of the boat. Yeah, it took about a minute for the ego interference to clear. It's like, oh gosh, even a little bit of laughter, like, yeah, try the right side. We've been fishing all night, try the right side. And yet, pray, listen, and follow. They did, wake up, throw our nets out the right side of the boat, and then boom, the weight from the fish comes. So this is a good reminder of how our lives have to go. We have to really pray, listen, and follow. We may not initially react very well to the guidance. We could see it there, you know. Try the right side of the boat. From the shore, this figure walking along, and we sometimes feel that, no. But we have to become really good. The best part of the parable of David is, if I try to sit with you all and try to even recall all these miracles that I've experienced over these last 37 years, you know, there's so many you could not put them into a book. You couldn't even put them into a bunch of books. But they are convincing. Every little pray, listen, and follow, when it comes forth and you see the blessing of it, that every little one of those has been very, very, very convincing for me, so that I can happily join you and talk about God's love without hesitation, because my mind has been rinsed and rinsed and rinsed and rinsed and rinsed with these little pray, listen, follows. You know, that's behind every travel, behind every communication, behind everything that's been done over these decades has been done by the Holy Spirit. And it was just to convince me to let go of the belief in death, you know, to not be a death worshiper anymore. That's really what it was all about. It wasn't about the form. It was about letting the mind and the heart be purified, so we can experience consistent joy, consistent inner peace, consistent happiness. That's what it's for. It's a purification process. And of course you have to be really gentle with yourself too, because until the pray, listen, and follow becomes a habit, then you notice your mind will tend to wander. The ego is a wandering expert. You know, it tries to inject all kinds of reasons to wander. Or even, I remember one time I met a friend of mine, and we took a walk together, and over the 20-minute walk, he kept saying, I wonder why this happened. I wonder why that happened in my life. I wonder why this happened. I still wonder why that happened. You know, he was going on. And finally, after like 20 minutes of walking with him, I started singing this song, Wonder, 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 who wrote the book of love? And we both burst into laughter, because all of his wonder questions were about form. He didn't ask me any questions about the mind. I had another friend who, when I first got the Peace House, I put up an ad because I thought it might be nice to have somebody else in the house, and she saw a sign that I'd put up on one of the telephone poles somewhere nearby, and she came there, and she would ask me so many questions about the form. And finally, I said to her, I said, Ruth, I'm not really interested in all this form stuff. I said, but if you have a sincere question from your heart, you can come up in the middle of the night and wake me up and we'll have a joining. But I'm not going to be just talking and trying to answer all these fear thoughts about the form. If you have a very good, sincere question, you can wake me up and we'll make a cup of coffee and tea and have a chat. But I'm not interested in knowing all these questions about the form, because that doesn't go anywhere. Those aren't really questions, those are statements. And when you ask a question about your consciousness, your mind, where your heart is, how your perception is, what you're feeling, what you're believing, even about what you're thinking, that brings it back to the mind, and that helps unravel the ego. So here we go. We just saw the net cast out on the right side of the boat, and then the man happily walking along the shore there. I think you might have a clue who that is. Here he comes again. Ah, that's what we need on Easter weekend. Transformation. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's interesting how our past learning has kind of pushed away this intense happiness and joy, but no longer. We don't have to let it push anything away. I was talking when I was having my little milkshake this morning with Lisa, and she said, yeah, some of the stuff, I think years ago, she had tried to read the Bible when she got to the story of Jonah and the whale, and she said, that's just ridiculous. A man in the belly of a whale. And then she was saying this morning, now she's getting all this symbology of what everything meant. It's a whole world of symbols. Let's admit, we've labeled and dismissed a lot of things as just ridiculous. But actually, it was, even in our dreams, we seem to have ridiculous dreams, but it's all just symbols. It's all just the Spirit reaching our mind, saying, come and be glad, come and wake up, come and remember the truth. And we don't have to judge or figure out the symbols, we just have to listen internally. What is this showing me? What is this showing me? So we'll take about a 10-minute break. Maybe that's something you can go to the restroom, maybe have a snack, take a 10-minute break, and then just ponder that thing. What does this movie mean to me? What does it mean to me, to my heart? What is it showing me? What did that movie show me? In conjunction with that reading from Jesus, lesson 167. Wow, that was a beautiful one too. There is one life, and that I share with God. That was our warm-up lesson. And we'll take a moment to go through some of the questions and reflections that you sent in, with a prayer to Jesus to just bring clarification and surety and clarity to our mind as we open up our hearts. So, the first one that has come in is from Yanni Kirkio from Connecticut in the United States. And Yane writes, should we go fishing or let the fish come to us? Oh, we got a great group today. Don't you love that? Should we go fishing or let the fish come to us? Well, in my experience in the parable of David, I don't know, I guess maybe it's very individualized, but in terms of reaching my heart, because I was so shy as a child and shy as a teenager and shy as a young adult in university, I think Jesus knew the best thing for me was to go fishing. I was kind of, I was like a loner, so Jesus was like, let's go fishing. So he took me all around the United States and around the world for decades. I was, in the Bible he said, I will make you fishers of men. Well, I was fishing in 44 countries, and I was fishing in 49 of the United States. And I think he knew that, wow, we got a real shy one here. So the best way to open the heart was for me to listen and follow, and I was taken mostly just traveling and traveling and traveling. So I met thousands and thousands and thousands of people. But I think for all of us, it's like when we meet the people along the way that are our witnesses, when we meet the dogs and the cats and the parakeets, uh, those are witnesses. Those are all like the little fish of our mind, helping us remember who we are. The little fish reflect back to us who we are, and Christ is the big fish. And in the end, you do have to let that big fish come in back into awareness, because it's always there. We can deny it, we can say it's not there, but it is there. Christ is always with us because it's who we are. It's our very identity. So the others are more just like reflections. But I found for myself that even when I was guided in 1986 to go to a humanistic psychology conference in La Jolla, California, that was a mind-opener trip for me. I had never taken a trip by myself to the Pacific Ocean, and then to have a humanistic psychology conference there. Carl Rogers, some of you know if Carl Rogers was speaking. That was the last conference he spoke at before he passed away. That's where I found A Course in Miracles. I had to leave my city, my friends, my family behind and jump like a jumping fish all the way out to the Pacific Ocean. And I remember when I got out there, I just was like, this salty sea breeze in Southern California near San Diego was just blowing over me. And I thought, oh my God, from Cincinnati to the Pacific Ocean, I felt this wave of, wow, warm air, moist air kind of touching my cheeks. And then when I went to the conference, it was a spectacular conference, and that's where A Course in Miracles came into my hands right at that conference. So in one sense, I had to go leave my stationary point and go for an experience. And then from there, I was guided to go up to Los Angeles. I went to the Foundation for Life Action, Tara Singh's place, and the miracles just started cascading like over me in my mind. So I think I was one of the ones that needed to go fishing. Jesus is like, let's go fishing. And then I met thousands of people. And that kind of washed away the shy perception, my shy guy perception, That'll do it. When Jesus brings hundreds and hundreds and thousands of people to you in a very intimate way, then that definitely popped me out of the self-concept of David. So I would say it's really a matter of trust, to just give your faith over to the Spirit, to Jesus. And I think for some people who are really busy, maybe Jesus would say, let the fish come to you. Stay stationary and let some fish start landing in your awareness. But it depends on where we seem to be. Jesus knows the way out. And so in some cases, I think you would let the fish come to us. So thank you for that question. The second one is from Michael Bouchard from British Columbia up there in Canada. Hi there. Hi, Michael. Michael writes, what is prayer when it is wordless? Yeah. I've been telling people for years, I tell them, God knows the prayer of your heart before you even speak a word. And I've said that hundreds of times, because the prayer of our heart is really what is our desire. And in the Song of Prayer, which Jesus wrote as a supplement to A Course in Miracles, he does even come right out and say that prayer is your desire. So desire is very deep. It's almost like the altar of your heart or the altar of your mind. And the prayer, the Song of Prayer describes like a ladder of prayer. And basically Jesus says in there, he says, well, you cannot really pray without words or asking or petitions while you believe in lack. But we still pray. You cannot help but pray for things because your mind, when it believes in the ego, it believes in lack. So it's very helpful to pray for things, and sometimes even to pray for like states of mind, or maybe for courage, or increased faith, increased trust. But the prayer that really is going on, the meaningfulness of prayer is that prayer is our desire. I've told people, since we're all one mind, if you desire a candy bar, then the whole universe desires a candy bar, because there are only one of us. So ultimately, we want to go deep into that prayer for inner peace. We want to go deep into that prayer for what is everlasting, what will last forever. And in the Song of Prayer, Jesus says, you finally reach the top of the ladder where your prayer is, Father, what is your will for me? That is the highest prayer that we can pray. That's like Jesus's prayer when he goes off to pray and commune with God on the Mount. Father, what is your will for me? And then he goes on to explain in A Course in Miracles that God's will for us is perfect happiness. Perfect happiness. Wow. No wonder it's the top of the ladder in prayer, because we couldn't pray for anything more. That's where the ladder ends. You know, when we're actually ready to ask that question or really pray that prayer, then it is given us, because giving and receiving are the same. But meanwhile, while we're forgiving and undoing our preferences, our desires for things of the world, then that means that we just have to be practical. So we may go into a situation and we may say, may the good of all prevail in this situation, or we may have a prayer that comes up for something specific, and then we receive a specific answer, and it's very helpful. And that builds our confidence in going deeper with prayer. So thank you, Michael. That was a beautiful question. That's when prayer is wordless. When we go all the way back into the desire of our heart, then God knows what that is. You know, we don't have to try to come up with fancy words or be articulate. God knows the prayer of our heart. And Jesus seemed to be really good too. Even that scene when he was there toward the end, and they were all sitting there, and suddenly this group of people just is chasing and kicking and beating, what was it, a leper? Wasn't it a leper? And then Jesus just watched with his soft look on his face, almost this look of, oh, my beloved brother. And then he gets up, he grabs a fish off the grill, he walks straight over like a beeline and gets down and starts holding and touching the leper. And the leper says, no one ever touches me. And that's where it starts. And then the miracle happens, and we see after he walks off that he is made whole. His leprosy is gone, and he's simply hiking on his way now, another witness to the love of God and the healing power. of Jesus. But I love that look on Jesus' face of just one of brotherly affection, like, oh, my beloved brother who's been kind of beaten and kicked and laying on the ground. And then Jesus goes and just showers him with all the love of God. So thank you, Michael. Beautiful question. And hi, Richard. I get a bonus. I get to say hi to Richard, my friend Richard. Okay, now we have Bridget from Lancashire, and Bridget writes, I am not at peace, so I know I have decided wrongly. Do I need to go to all my family and ask their forgiveness for my mistaken perception? I'm frightened and I feel guilty, but this must be a wrong perception also, if I'm not feeling joy. I'm confused as to how to handle it and what to do with my life if rejected. Well, Bridget, I would say the first thing that, there's Bridget, I see you over there. Hi, Bridget. I would say that since the Holy Spirit and Jesus want us to heal our perception, the first thing to do with all of your family is just simply to offer them to the Holy Spirit. That's the first step. Just say, Holy Spirit, I just give you all of my family. I'm giving it fully to you to bring healing. And that step is the major step right there, because we are not to try to figure out our own awakening. Jesus says, you cannot wake yourself, but you can allow yourself to be awakened. So the prayer of the heart, once you give your family over to the Holy Spirit, one thing you can be sure of is He will correct all past mistakes, even anything that you did retroactively, just by truly, sincerely giving it over to the Holy Spirit. Poof, He handles all the mistakes immediately. And then from that state of mind where you start to feel the presence and you feel more the innocence coming in to take over for the guilt that once was there. Because Jesus wants us to let Him bring the people, just like the previous question, or the first question about let the fish come to us. When you offer the prayer of healing, then Jesus will instruct you, like put somebody on your heart. If there's anybody you're to reach out to, you will be told. If there's anybody that you can just hold them in love and light and say, I give it to you. Obviously, we don't have to necessarily try to contact every person that we believe we've wronged, because the healing occurs in the mind. So Jesus is even saying in his workbook that basically, if we can just forgive one person completely, it will transfer to everyone and everything automatically. So even if that one person is Bridget, if that's the one that you've held in guilt the hardest, if you've really thought, oh, I've really made big mistakes in my life and I feel so sad and so guilty about that, it's always nice to think of that statement from Jesus. If you can just forgive one person completely, it will transfer to everything and everyone. So this is the time to be really gentle with yourself. This is the time to not beat yourself up for what you did that you believe you shouldn't have done, or what you didn't do that you believe you should have done. Whether it's errors of saying or doing something, or errors of omission, they are all the same error to Jesus. Jesus says, bring bring your prayer to me, and bring your prayer to the Holy Spirit, and immediately the Holy Spirit will come to you with a message of innocence. He's even got a part in the Course where he says, what if you feel the evidence is so strong and that you have built a case against yourself that feels like it's that you're guilty? And Jesus says, bring that case to the higher court, the Holy Spirit, and see that you are already absolved. You are already absolved. Appeal to the higher court. Appeal to the Blessed Spirit, and the Spirit will show you you are absolved. When I worked at hospice, I've told this story sometimes, how when I first was volunteering at hospice, I would walk along the hall, sometimes carrying plates of food. And as I was walked down the hall by the doors, I would hear people inside of their rooms going, "Psst, David, psst, 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 come in here." And so I'd have a plate of food. I'd be going down the end of the hall, but I would stop and go in there. And before I would go in to see them, Jesus would say, just shower them with love. Tell them what a beautiful life that they lived. Tell them of all the gratitude for the beautiful life that they lived and all the gifts that they've given. And tell them that they have done a wonderful job and that they are so blessed. So in every room that I was called into, I would deliver some form of that message. And then, this was hospice, so the next day I would go in and they were gone. My message of pure innocence was just being accepted as, thank you very much, and good afternoon, good evening, and good night. I was clearing the ward out with my love and my innocence, because life is not of the body. We're not really here to prolong the body. We're here to find the innocence in our hearts. And that's what Jesus wants to share, and that's what the Holy Spirit is always telling us. So I think very practically for you is, first thing to do is just give your family over to the Holy Spirit. That is the most glorious thing you can ever do. And anything else from there, it'll be obvious. You don't even have to figure it out after that. It'll be shown to you. So thank you, Bridget. Love you. Beautiful. And Malfred from Norway. Hi, Malfred. Beautiful. Have those beautiful little chimes behind you and the bright light. Malfred writes, I have had several deep mystical experiences where there was a shift in perception from divided seeing into oneness and light. Some lasted like 5 days. Now it is maybe 2 years since the last major shift. There has been a few minor shifts. I long so much for seeing with the true light. Why is this? Oh. I must have hit a wrong button there, but here we go. It's back. Boy, it popped away. Why? The screen went blank, but it's back. Why is this so that the perception turns back to dualistic seeing? And can it help me to know why? Can I help you to know why I do not shift permanently? Well, that's kind of the way that Jesus describes the awakening. He says in the Course, he said, doubt along the way will come and go to go and come again. The way he words it is it's going to be a process of shifting back and forth. And I know that can seem discouraging, but it's just like recently I was talking about how deep the fog was. This fog of forgetfulness or this amnesia is so deep that even when we have the light experiences and even when we have these huge glimpses, then we do seem to have more to come up from the unconscious mind. And it is, I think it is just a matter of prayer and devotion, in the sense that when you really just devote yourself, like the workbook lessons say, I am determined to see. I am determined to see things differently. Above all else, I am determined to see. Above all else, I am determined to see things differently. You can feel where he's heading. He's heading to deepening devotion and desire above all else, when he uses the words above all else. And that seems to be the path of purification, where we just keep patiently coming and saying, yes, I would put God on my altar, I would put divine love, divine light on my altar, and then every day, that makes it into the adventure of just showing up with that prayer. So every day when your eyes open and you face the day, you keep coming back to that prayer. I know for me, movies have been really helpful reminders, and sometimes course lessons, and sometimes a combination of the two. There was a friend of mine who made an album called Course Chants, and these were chants of Course in Miracles lessons that he did with all these instruments and cymbals and shakers and drums and everything, and everybody would kind of get high chanting in a room, chanting a Course in Miracles lesson. I find that very helpful. I find a lot of things that come my way have a real resonance, like, oh, this feels helpful. And then you start to just open yourself to let the symbols of helpfulness come. And you don't even know what they're going to be. That's kind of the adventure of it. What is it that you want to show me today? What do you have for me today? What opportunity do you have for me to give my heart? Whatever it is. And then it seems to build a momentum, like the faith starts to grow stronger and stronger and take you toward the light. Because that's really what you're asking for here, is you're saying, wow, what an amazing experience of shift in perception to seeing into oneness and light. And then also the part about it's been maybe 2 years since the last major shift. Well, the ego will take that and it will try to turn it into a major comparison to try to drag your mind down. I've talked to some people recently where I was saying, yeah, that comparison device is like an old trick, the way it was and the way it is. And then we have a judgment of the disparity. But I think what really you're praying for is just to have a spark in your heart so that you can come fresh, come anew every day, come anew every moment, to that, and not get caught into trying to classify your life or the spiritual journey. Because when we try to classify it or categorize it or codify it in some way, then then the experience is gone. We're just we're into the box of our own making, and we don't want to be in that box anymore. So our prayers are with you to say, we really want to stay fired up. Or as Linda would say, all fired up. She sang that song, Pat Benatar's song, all fired up with some passion. And that's what we want. We're always just praying to stay all fired up. And Jesus is even using Pat Benatar. That's right. Hang on, hold on to your hat with this ministry. We're just going all the way with it. So thank you, Malfried. Thank you for writing. And Candela from Granada, Spain. Hi, Candela. Hi. Candela writes, "Blessings, family. I have felt the joy of Easter that you have been commenting for days, David. In spite of so much suffering, attacks, murders, nightmarish scenes, love always triumphs. Peter forgave the tribune in spite of hurting him while carrying the water, and that the only true forgiveness is that seeing that nothing happened. Nothing to fear with faith and Jesus at our side. The end was like Mary Magdalene, a smile, a recognition that when we pray from the heart, Jesus was already there. Jesus mentioned to the tribune a day without death, and that was a very deep recognition. Wow, that's it. You could tell that that was so touching for the tribune, because he had said those words to Pilate, to Pontius Pilate himself in the pool, and Jesus came back, and that specific reference is how the Spirit works. We can't miss it. That was the best thing Jesus could have said to the tribune there. Jesus is already in my prayers, and these are seeds that have already sprouted, and there is no turning back. I too will see the shining of my heart as in the movie, and I was moved by the sound of the opening of the tomb in the first scene. It seems as if my heart has opened a little more. Thank you, David, for in you I feel the saying of Jesus, I only deserve miracles. That's it. Wow, what a beautiful thought to wake up every day with. I only deserve miracles. Yeah, that's how we stay above the battleground. We don't even have to figure out or put our attention to the battleground. We want to stay high up, high in the miracle. So thank you, Candela. Blessings to you and all of our beautiful brothers and sisters and over there in Granada. And Irma Craik from Europe. Hi, Irma. Wow, this is great. The first time I saw you here on the weekend, you were talking about how your husband suddenly passed away. And that was so beautiful and so transparent. And then that really helped kick us off, because that theme of transcending death and really looking closely at that theme and letting ourselves be lifted is like a key to the whole weekend. So I think he's right with you here, smiling and laughing. You were saying, I need a sign, and he's like, well, I'm doing this whole weekend for you. What more could you ask for? He's very strong with us, that's for sure. So Irma writes, what are you afraid of? Jesus asked. Being wrong, Clavius said, that was what Clavius was most afraid of, being wrong. I was wondering a long time why I cannot let Jesus in totally, always the voice. But imagine you are wrong about Jesus. So yeah, that's it. That's how the ego works. It's just in there, this dark voice. Imagine you are wrong about Jesus. I never knew that was my fear, but it is. Fear of being wrong. I still don't know why this is such a big deal, being wrong. So what? Question mark. But part of me protects this with my life. I cannot take the risk of being wrong and release the ego and surrender to God. Can you tell me more about this danger, quote, danger of being wrong for choosing God? Well, if you could go into your mind, like way, way, way down to the very, very bottom of the mind, you would find there's just one belief that that is behind the, the, the fear of being wrong. And that one belief is sacrifice. So if you could go all the way to the bottom of your mind and you had your like tweezers and you say, what is it? What is the one thing that's down there that's still giving me concern about being wrong? And that's the belief in sacrifice. So the way it is that in heaven, all is love, all is one, and then as soon as the mind believes it can separate from the Creator, from God and oneness, then it's a complete, total amnesia that happens. So what in heaven is the only thing that can be known, which is God and love, becomes the unknown in this world. And so God is the big question mark, the big unknown in this world. Because this world has been accepted as the truth and as reality now. So what seemed to precede the reality, which was spirit, is now seen with the big question mark. So ever since the belief in separation, the mind is off kilter. You know, it's been shaken up because of the guilt of believing the impossible. Believing I can separate from my Creator is an impossible thought. But if I believe the impossible, then that generates a feeling of guilt. Not that guilt is real, but it is experienced as real because of this belief of separation. Now, as you turn it around, you say, wait a minute, I'm going the other direction. Now I want to go back to the light. Then the spirit will slowly work for interpreting and starting to see the world in a different way. But every time you take a leap and every time you see the world in a like a mind shift, we'll call it, the ego is going to say, watch out, you better be cautious, you better not be wrong, better watch out, better not cry, better not pout, I'm telling you why. God's love is coming to mind. You know, it's the God's love is the undoing of the ego, and the ego is the belief that you're going to have to give up something real or valuable or important in order to remember your Christ identity and remember God. So that's the belief, and that's where people say to me things like, well, I'm being called by God, but I'm a little afraid of what I'm going to have to sacrifice. And right there it is right there when they say, what is it going to cost me? What is it going to cost me? What will I have to sacrifice? And honestly, if we look at it just another way, you know, the thing that seems to have to be released is our identification with the body and the personality self. That's the biggest fear of sacrifice. Like, do I have to give up me personally to be loved by you? And I was talking recently about some of the recent decades, I would say recent, but you and I know that we remember. Do you remember the 1970s? Maybe not. 70s was called the me decade, and then the 80s was another version of the me decade, and the 90s and the 2000s. So basically, the society has become obsessed with the personality. That's why we have all these social media things, and everyone has to have a selfie with everyone else now, because it's like narcissism run a wild, narcissism gone wild, and really that's because of the fear of sacrifice, the fear of losing a self. So to the ego, basically, that's why it's saying don't go near the light or near God, because you have to give up something that's really good, and that's the personality self. So people may sometimes read the Course for years and they don't quite let it in that this is about merging with the light and letting go of the personality self. How does that play out? when you're going through awakening. It plays out in terms of just being open to an experience of absolute perfect equality with all my brothers and sisters. I see that was Marina's prayer when she moved to a new house recently. She prayed for perfect equality. And what a beautiful prayer, because there's something in us that knows that equality is the way. And equality is our step in perception towards the oneness of God. So when we feel humble, when we feel equal, when we feel no one's behind, no one's ahead, no one's inferior, no one's superior, our heart just relaxes. We breathe fresh air. We think, oh yeah, that feels really good. And I think when we look at Jesus as a role model, he had such equality, such humbleness, such meekness. That's why he had this relaxed smile on his face as we watched in the movie. Even when Clavius first came in with a big sword in his hand, still Jesus just looked at him directly in the eyes with a big smile. Here comes a Roman soldier opening the door, coming into the upper room where he's visiting, his resurrection visit with the apostles, and all Jesus can do is smile at him and when their eyes meet. And that is that recognition of perfect equality, that sees past the Roman or past the Jew, it sees past male, female, it sees past learning, education, status, all the things of the world that the world says, ego says are important. They're really not. The simple truth is we can be content knowing that we're perfect equals. And we can actually feel that there's goodness in feeling perfectly equal with everyone. Because honestly, when we look at it, we can admit that trying to be superior or playing the guilt game of inferiority, those never felt good. We never were happy when we were playing the game of superiority or inferiority. So I feel like that's the step towards oneness in a very practical way. So to come closer to Jesus and kind of let that, what if I'm wrong about God thought, or what if I'm wrong about Jesus thought, to let that kind of ease out of your mind and fade away, I would just practice daily just focusing on the idea of perfect equality. Because you have your brothers and sisters, you have your friends, you have the ones you interact with, and that's the perfect learning opportunity to practice that. Even if you go out to have a cup of tea, or you go out for a meal with them, or you go to watch a movie together, just take a moment to just hold in your heart, okay, show me my perfect equality with my friends. And then I think you'll start to, in a very natural way, that way you can leave the theology out of it. I think many people feel a bit of a distance with Jesus because of the learning of the past, the theologies. It was skewed. Some people praise Jesus so much that they actually believe Jesus was God, but in the Course he says, no, I and the Father are one, clearly has two parts to the statement. And he's saying only the feeling of awe should only be reserved for God. He said, at one point he says, you can think of me like an elder brother. And by elder, that just means that we're both the same, we're both equal, and the only difference is you still believe in time and I don't. I like that. We're complete equals, but you believe in time and I don't. But in the end, he's sure that we won't believe in time either, that we'll come to accept the perfect equality there. So thank you. I'm glad to see you smiling and happy, and yeah, I feel your husband's been with us the whole time, all weekend here. So thank you. Love you so much, Irma. Beautiful. It's beautiful. And Charles Rosasco from California. There's Charles. Hi, Charles. Beautiful. Charles writes, the major crucifixion I'm seeing this Easter is of doubt in my mind into the resurrection of complete faith. Well, that's a great summary. That really does summarize our weekend. The doubt in my mind into the resurrection of complete faith. That's beautiful. Jesus states that doubt will come and go on the ACIM path. I'm wearied by the coming and going of doubt over many years. Please speak on the nature of the complete resurrection of faith to end doubt once and for all. Well, I think for me, there came an early phase in my life where I felt like Jesus was saying, I'm going to take care of you. And I thought, what does that mean? And he said, I'm going to take care of you in every way. And I said, ooh, that sounds huge. But I think it took a kind of a leap of faith and trust for me to say, like, okay, then do that. Show me that you're going to take care of me in every way. And I can now, in retrospect, I feel more, it's like he was really saying, if you learn to listen to my voice and follow it, you will see that you have no needs and that you're lacking for nothing, which was a pretty big leap. You know, I was raised in the Christian church and a Protestant work ethic and 10 years of university to try to find a career and all those things. But it wasn't until I took my first, 5 years of road trips with Jesus that I could see and feel during those road trips it seemed like a fairy tale. I mean, actually even the first night out and the rest of those 5 years seemed like continuous fairy tale. Very surreal because, I would say if you travel, you have to have, obviously car, gasoline, and places to stay, lodging, food. There's many things. If you can't take a trip in the United States for any length of time without certain things being met. And I had my own ideas of how those should be met, but I was blown away. I mean, that first trip of 5.5 weeks, it was kind of blew my mind. It felt very surreal. It felt like I was watching something, and I couldn't believe all the holy encounters and all the offers of, oh, come and stay with us, and do you need some gas for your car? Do you need a place to stay? Oh, we're doing a Course in Miracles potluck. Many potlucks, it was almost like I was concerned if I'd have enough food to eat. And then Jesus was laughing, like throwing potlucks with huge amounts of food at me, almost like, I'm like, are you kidding me? This is like, I have to practice not overeating here. It's the last thing I expected. I was thinking, and my friend, I was traveling with a friend, she was like, she was saying things to me when we took off, like, we're going to run out of money, because we didn't really have money for a long trip. She said, we're probably going to have to end up going to a restaurant and doing dishes to pay for our food. I mean, that's the kind of mentality it was. But it went far from that. It went far in the other direction. We were so abundantly taken care of without really any kind of effort on our own part. All we were doing was sharing the love and meeting the people and going to course groups along the way where I was invited. And then by the time I made it out to the Pacific Northwest, to Whidbey Island, my friend Dorothy, it was a small car, but she said, the Spirit guided me before you got here for like 2 or 3 weeks to wrap up everything here and to go with you. So we had a tiny little car, and then we now had 3 of us in the car. And it was just miracle after miracle after miracle after miracle. So I would say to the question of please speak on the nature of the complete resurrection of faith to the end of doubt once and for all, I would say for me, it was this sense of divine providence. I mean, if somebody had asked me back at the beginning about divine providence, I would have said, oh yeah, that's like Mother Teresa, right? And St. Francis. I probably would have picked a couple people from history, and I would say, yeah, they they were living in divine providence. St. Francis and Mother Teresa come to mind. But I wouldn't have put David in that category because that was not my experience. That felt like pie in the sky. It was too high. But by trusting Jesus, I think it was more for me to listen and follow. And the more I did that and relaxed doing that, like just relax, letting the guidance just drop in and follow and drop in, then it was very surreal and miraculous how everything, it was like I would be like, this is really surreal. I would open up my course book and Jesus would say, if you'll be a miracle worker for me, I will arrange time and space for you. And I was like, oh my gosh, is this arranging time and space? I didn't learn that in 10 years of university. There was no class on having time and space arranged. And I was in university for 10 years full time, undergraduate and graduate. There's not a class in there, a course that even touches that. But I think Jesus knew, yeah, it's time to be shown. The way will open, but you have to really surrender kind of old ideas in order to get into the new way that will be shown. And I do feel that built my trust. My trust level went higher and higher and higher and higher. And then when I started in 2003, to be open to go to other countries, then that started world travels. And I had no ideas how that would happen. I kind of felt that was what the new direction was, but I had no idea where's the airfares going to come from. I'm not like, at the time, I couldn't say, oh, I'm a known Course in Miracles author that is in high demand all over the world. I wasn't. How, you're just going to travel the world and nobody knows who you are. And Jesus is like, remember, I'm the one who arranges time and space here. I will arrange everything. Airfares, planes, trains, boats, invitations, all over the place, lots of invitations, flying back and forth across the Pacific Ocean for 7 consecutive years to Australia. I would never have saw that coming. That's a long flight, 12-hour flight, but then back and forth for 7 consecutive years. And then another friend writes, why do you keep flying over Hawaii and not landing in Hawaii? And I don't know. He says, well, come into Hawaii. So, okay. I go there, and then we ended up having a center over on the ocean in Hawaii. I mean, it just kept, blah, 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 blah. But it just kept like being as surreal as it was at the beginning. It was like, it's out of my hands, I have no control over it. But that built a trust because I was so convinced, my mind, it seems like every day with every group of miracles, I was getting more certain about this journey. Not in a theological way, not like I'm trying to find the correct theology, but more in an experiential way of like, wow, this is amazing. Things would just keep showing up and showing up and showing up and showing up. And then after it goes for years and years, you actually expect things to just show up because before you would never have thought that would happen, but then you kind of get taken kind of a bit like on a magic carpet ride, and then it's very convincing through that. And then the doubt just starts to fade away. Because I think it's more of a focus on the present moment then, so you're not really like trying to associate meaning with certain forms, it starts to feel more abstract and more expansive, and that's the kind of the way that it goes. So I would just say, take heart. When those doubt thoughts come, it's always wonderful when they go, but when they come back, it's like, oh, don't rain on my parade. I was just marching in the parade, having a beautiful march on a sunny day, and then they come back. But I feel like it's all working together for good. We're meant to learn how to pray deeper and expand our faith, and that's one thing that came up when the doubt thoughts would come. I would always go into a prayer of like, please show me beyond this, show me something beyond this. When I felt like I was in my darkest hours, sometimes I could just surrender. I one time went up to Wisconsin to be up there with a group of friends, and my friend Cindy, one day, she called me and she just said, I can't move my body. I'm in bed and I can't seem to move my body at all. And had a little bit of fear, but she just said, would you come and join with me? So I just went over there and held her for hours and hours and hours and hours until the fear in her went away. And it was just, I was supposed to give a presentation that day on escaping the matrix. And so instead of going to give a talk on escaping the matrix, I spent the day in a hotel room, a dark hotel room, just holding Cindy for hours and hours and hours. And I thought, this was escaping the matrix for me. This was just as important as giving a talk at some center. So, you start to relax into it, just shows itself. You feel more relaxed every day with it. So thank you for writing that in. I'm sure you wrote that question for a lot of people, because many people feel kind of depressed or frustrated with the back and forth of the doubt thoughts and the expansions. Thank you. Thank you, Charles. And Yvonne McNulty from New York, there comes. At La Casa de Milagros. Hi, Yvonne. Beautiful. Yvonne writes, my prayer on this Easter weekend is to know Jesus and his heart, and to be able to speak about it without shame. I think the fear of embarrassment is holding me back, to be seen as a, quote, Jesus freak. Many in my age group in Ireland have dismissed his teachings because of the mishaps of the Catholic Church. I'm already speaking about him a lot with my parents, and I don't think I'll be able to hold back with friends also. I pray that I forgive this judgment of myself. Oh, that's beautiful. I think for people that have had even exposure to Jesus and Christianity, this is a very common thing, embarrassment. I know I felt it at the beginning when I first started studying the Course in 1986, and then when I would even go to course groups, and if anybody asked me to talk about Jesus, I had an embarrassment. And I know, Eric, you were saying you had that for a while too, like an embarrassment of Jesus. And it seemed to last for a while, and then all of a sudden it kind of got blown away. And now you've seen him with his 4 guitars and rocking for Jesus and singing Jesus songs like he's been singing them for 35 years. You would never know that Eric had embarrassment, or you probably would never know, much listening to me, that I had an embarrassment. But I did notice that at the beginning. I thought, yeah, I'm feeling a little bit of embarrassment here. But I think it comes in from this ego self-concept of wanting to be liked and accepted. So if we're living with a group of people and they're not so accepting of Jesus or the teachings, then if we start talking about Jesus, the fear is, oh my God, they're going to think I'm a Jesus freak. They're going to think I've completely lost it for Jesus. And, or they're just going to say, what happened to you? You used to be so reasonable, and now you talk about it. So I went from starting off with some embarrassment about Jesus, and then I would read the Course for like 8 hours a day for the first 2.5 years. It's an oracle kind of thing, and then I started, going to course groups and everything. And sometime I hit the high octane with it, because I was like talking, and then I went through a phase where I prefaced everything I would say with, Jesus says, and then I would say, and Jesus says, and I was like a little boy, Jesus says, and I was talking, till finally one day somebody said, what do you say? And I could hardly believe they were asking me the question. I said, of course I say what Jesus says. I couldn't even answer the question, when they said, what do you say? I say what Jesus says. Like, of course I say what Jesus says, because I was just swept up into that. And then finally Jesus in my mind was like saying, you don't have to say Jesus says in front of everything that you speak. You're scaring people. It's like, would you stop it? So that's great. When Jesus says, don't say Jesus says. I'm like, okay, all right. I'm glad. Immediately, yeah, that's good. But you're bringing up. I think you just have to try to be very natural and congruent with your feelings. To not try to think you have to speak in a certain way, and start to just relax and say, I would rather just the Spirit put the words in my mouth. Because I found when I traveled, when I was on planes, trains, buses, walking in parks and laundromats and grocery stores, I started to really like how I could just relax and just feel really peaceful in my heart. And then these encounters would seem to be arranged where I could just have a real heart-to-heart talk with whoever I was talking with. If I was talking to a Buddhist, they would say, you sound like a Buddhist, because the Spirit would give the languaging there. Or I was talking to an atheist, I had wonderful conversations with atheists. We were like hugging each other by the end of the conversation, because I wasn't trying to identify with a particular theology or a particular belief system. And I felt that that's really what Jesus wanted in my heart. He wanted me to connect with everyone and help, just feel the joy and let Jesus inspire the joy with every encounter. And so I wasn't trying to control the words or the form. I was just trying to feel that connection, and then let the words or the hugs or whatever come out in a natural way. And I think that really helped me in a very profound way, because then I didn't have to define myself, as this or that. And I like that. If God is undefined, I like being undefined too. So it gives me freedom to just enjoy the moment and enjoy the connection. So thank you, Yvonne. That is very understandable, coming from being raised in Ireland, and the Protestants and the Catholics and all the struggles. I mean, there was years where I remember Northern Ireland, and there was all kinds of terrorism going on, all in the name of religion. I mean, that seems like the most absurd thing, to be arguing or fighting over religion, but that happens a lot in the world, until we just relax and say, no, I'm not going to try to identify with one particular theology or one particular saint or guru. I just want to feel the connection in my heart, the love in my heart. So thank you. Thank you, Yvonne. Beautiful. Okay, and then we have Isabel de Ward from the Netherlands. Hi, Isabel. Beautiful. Hi, David. I've been going through a lot of intensity over the last weeks. In every aspect of my life, healing seems to be coming up. My job, university degree, family relationships, my romantic relationship, houses, interests, preferences, everything. The whole self-concept. It feels like there is a big shift happening. The Course's teachings are so different from the worldly view. Sometimes I feel very alone in trying to pray, listen, and follow. It seems impossible to explain any of the feelings or shifts or guidances, but not communicating at all with the people around me does not seem like an option either. I continue to pray for faith and to be revealed the truth in my heart. Oh yes, Isabel, I feel your heart too. I went through that, it seems like for years, where I felt like I was kind of a nomad, kind of floating, uh, still with one foot in the world and one foot kind of going in a new direction that was very different from the world. And and the feelings around communications seem to involve some kind of awkwardness too, because we're just allowing ourselves to slowly be convinced by the Spirit. And sometimes we can become impatient with that process because it seems like a bit back and forth. Like we're doing the splits. I felt like I had one foot in the world and one foot in the new direction, and I felt like one of those gymnasts that just starts doing the splits because it was just like, these are not coming together. I feel like I'm just being split. But I would just have to keep reminding myself, because it did seem like things that were familiar to me or that I had a lot of meaning invested in started to be loosened from my mind. And I remember going to the Course and rereading those sections called The Development of Trust in the Manual for Teachers over and over. One of them says, it will seem as if things are being taken away from you. So I would read that over and over, him saying, it's not really that, it's just that your mind is starting to devalue the things that it once valued. So it seems like they're leaving, but they're not really leaving, you're just going through a value transformation in the mind. And he said, this is just part of the awakening. And then I think there was another part where it was my perception of relationships was starting to shift so much. And I would just read that section on when you meet anyone, remember it's a holy encounter, because I would have to read things that would kind of be an anchor or a reminder to me that I was becoming more aware of a new purpose for the world, and that everything that I had perceived was starting to shift and shake a little bit. So these are the times where it feels, even if you have one person that you can kind of pour your heart out with or deeply connect with, that makes a huge difference. If it doesn't feel like you have someone to really join with and connect with during this transition phase, it seems intense, because then we're always going more, what can I share and what can't I share, what is safe to share and what is something that I just have to notice for myself and see the blessing for myself. But that's where you have the prayer of the heart. I mean, I can remember different people I met, like my friend Dorothy, when we first met in, I think it was like 1990, up in the Catskill Mountains. she was just someone that I could instantly talk about anything with. And she seemed to be just at a same kind of place with her mind. And so this was very helpful because we both were connecting about our insights, pondering about things together. We were kind of more like spiritually on the same page in our mind. And that helped ease the tension a bit, being able to have those talks and just talk about it and express and emote, let the emotions up too. That seems important. And yeah, uh, I know you had talked about possibly being able to come over to the monastery if you could get away for a period of time, but those kind of immersions, I had little immersions here and there that helped. There was a helpfulness to it, but every time I would go through kind of a deep immersion, then I was a little concerned how I would come out on the other side, because every time there was a shift in my perception of the world, my relationships and everything. Started off when the early travels with my family, like I would just say to Jesus, I'd be on the road and I miss my family. And then when I would go out for 5.5 or 6 weeks, I would come back and then he would be like, okay, now how does it feel now? And I would be like, every time it would be like a little different. But we need to shift that way kind of in increments, because it would be too intense to have like too big of a radical shift. We need more of the smaller shifts, like baby steps, one little baby step at a time, and then we can build our faith. We can start to feel our confidence growing as long as there's baby steps, and as long as there's small little steps, then it's a lot easier. So I'm just with you all the way, and we are with you all the way, and I'm always so appreciative when you come on one of these movie gatherings or get to see you, and I still occasionally have brief calls with people here and there, or an exchange. Somebody just wrote to me from Brazil today who has been in the course for 3 years, but she's just feeling such a huge shift, and she doesn't even speak English, but she must have used Google Translate, because she said she speaks only Portuguese and Spanish, but we have these opportunities to have these joining points and connections. So I think if it gets to the point where it starts to feel very intense, yeah, please reach out. Yeah, please reach out, because that's really important. That's what we wish for everybody, is that they go through this transition in a way that is acceptable in the mind. If it doesn't get to be too intense. So yeah, please reach out. That's You are so loved. We're so joined with you in this journey. Thank you. Thank you, Isabel. Beautiful. And I see Nani now in Oregon. I've seen you and David have been having a nice trip around. There's Nani. Hi, Nani. Nice to see you again. Nani and David were out for one of our Renovatio movie retreats at the monastery, so that was lovely. Deep friendships there that we'll carry with us for for as long as we're still perceiving. Nani writes, thank you, Jesus, thank you, Holy Spirit of God, thank you. May we all feel you and praise you, Lord. May we all keep on trusting that there is not such a thing as dying when your Spirit shows up in our hearts. May these so-called bodies of us keep praying, keep listening, keep following your loving and tender guidance as we open our hearts more and more to your unconditional love and eternal divine existence. And as we rest in peace, we rest in joy, we rest in freedom, and we cry tears of bliss and renaissance. May our prayers reach the heart of all the dreamers in need to remember and wake up. May this holy instant be eternal in us. I feel you so deeply, and I'm grateful for your teachings of unconditional love, and humbly and forever grateful for your presence and revelations in this seeming life of mine. Om Shanti Om Namaste Sat Chit Ananda Hari Om Aham Brahmasmi Namaste. Thank you, David Hoffmeister. I love you. Boy, that's good. I'm going to have to do that mantra when I when I get back to today. That's so precious. Thank you, Nani. We all feel your heart with that. That's it. That's all we do is we just pray to stay humble and stay connected. Yeah. So thank you. Lots of love. Looks like you got a nice little library there in Oregon after your travels. That's beautiful. And Brian Cassie from Georgia. Hi, Brian. Nice to see you again. I've been enjoying seeing you on these online events. That's lovely. Lovely to see you. Brian writes, I felt as Clavius in the movie. I felt his sense of pride and that sense of honor that came with a good station in life and the responsibility of leadership. I really felt that vertically calling me when Clavius witnessed Jesus resurrected. It seems that this wish for human stability is one of my biggest blocks to love and faith in my life right now. So it was very touching to watch Clavius give this over to God. I am wondering how I can continue to unwind this belief system while playing my seeming part in the seeming world in a healthy, balanced way, if that is even possible. Yeah, I would say it is. It is possible. That's the beauty of guidance. I feel like for all these years, I really felt like a sense of growing and expanding, a sense of lightheartedness, a sense of humor and laughter coming in. I really felt a sense that I wasn't trying to skip over anything, to try to project myself into some kind of state of mind, but to just relax and just try to be as intuitive as I could and just take it step by step with my guidance. Because I do feel like you're saying we all want a sense of stability. We want a sense of stability, and we believe that there would be opportunities, like leadership opportunities, that that would be helpful. And I think that's why I always trust that Jesus and the Holy Spirit, they know our hearts. So if we need to be put into some roles where there's more leadership that will help expand us and strengthen us, then we will be. That's the way it's gone for me. I was put into different leadership symbols, and I started to realize, well, this is good, because if I feel any kind of embarrassment or awkwardness with accepting the role that Jesus gives me, then that's why I need the role. I need to humbly let the role be used to rinse my mind. So that way we don't have to try to push, like make any decisions about what we would do or wouldn't do. It's very common when people come to spiritual community even where over the years, you can see them put into different roles by the Spirit, and that it all works out in a very helpful way. Not that that's their point where they're going to stay, but it's just a temporary role that gets used to strengthen the faith. So we have people sometimes that come and then they're put in a leadership role, and then they face their doubt thoughts, they face their uncertainties by stepping into that role. And ultimately, we want to go beyond any sense of leader-follower, because we want to just experience the light of who we are, which doesn't really have these roles in it. But when we approach that light, we have to let the Spirit go before us and use those kind of roles and symbols. So we've done some retreats where we've talked about that. They're probably on the internet, and on Spreaker or on one of the platforms, Apple or Spotify. But we've gone into that topic kind of in depth. And the main thing I'm hearing from your question is it possible? Yes. Can it be done in a kind of a healthy, balanced way? Yes. It's like there has to be a feeling of like equilibrium as we move through these expansions. If we're feeling out of balance, then it works against us. We start to have more doubt thoughts, like we feel out of control. We feel we need to build our confidence, much like working with a child and helping the child build the confidence in what they're learning. They need a sense of confidence. There was a Whitney Houston song, wasn't it? Something like, I believe in the children of the world, teach them well and let them lead the way, show them all the beauty they possess inside. That's that Whitney Houston song. She's like saying, yeah, children to develop need a sense of confidence for them to keep growing. If they have too much doubt, they won't. They'll close down, they'll contract, they'll feel fear. So I feel like that's when we really say, like Clavius, I don't think he saw anything coming, but obviously he had a prayer in his heart, he wanted a day without death. And he even spoke it up to Pilate, and then that was like his deep prayer. And then I don't think any of us can really foresee the way that would be best for us. But the Holy Spirit does, and Jesus knows what's good for us, what we can handle. So that's why I think it's good to have a good prayer life and develop your faith, but also to be very gentle with yourself. Don't be second guessing yourself or looking back at the past and with criticism, lots of criticism. My view from a time perspective is I think everybody's doing the best that they can based on what they believe. So even with my biological father, at one point, he sat down with me and he said, "Oh, Dave, I really wasn't a very good father." And I just looked him in the eye and I hugged him and I said, "Oh, that's nonsense. You did the best you could do based on what you believed. I did the best I could do based on what I believed. And we're not going to buy into this thing of it could have been different. Well, let's just rejoice right now that we have such a great, loving connection." And he just lit up. He lit up before my eyes, and he just was lit up the rest of his life because I was basically saying, I'm not going to hold you to the past, and I'm grateful if you don't hold me to the past either. And then we were set free in that moment. It was glorious to behold. So thank you, Brian. Always love your questions, and yeah, they're very probing and introspective. I can feel how this is really important for you, that you want to take your steps, but not feel there's a push with it, or not feel that you're kind of out out of balance, because that doesn't feel good when we start to feel like we're spinning, like we've lost our center. So beautiful. Thank you, Brian. And Botan Perez from Romania. Hi there. I think I made a reference to you at the beginning of, yeah, you've gone through some quite intense things with the Kundalini experiences, and that's interesting that your question came up right after Brian, because there we were talking about equilibrium and and balance, and it sounds like you've had some like major openings and major Kundalini experiences, but then the panic attacks and the destabilization seem to hit too. So Botan writes, I pray that we all awaken joyfully to the awareness of heaven, exclamation point. I've watched almost the entire movie feeling quite peaceful throughout, even during the graphic scenes, but then when we got to the whole scene at the end of Jesus rising to heaven in front of the disciples, I was crying so hard through it that I couldn't keep my eyes open, so I didn't even really see the scene. So powerful. I feel it was a beautiful healing ending. But of course, the whole movie is masterful leading up to it. Thank you for this beautiful movie workshop. Thank you, Botan. That's how I feel too. I just feel such a strong gratitude with this movie, because I've seen so many Jesus movies, but wow, not from this angle. What an idea! Somebody thinking, let's show it from a Roman tribune who follows Jesus coming from the perspective of starting point of that. So, and I do think that was a beautiful ending. You know, that was very bright, with the sky so bright and the words coming. Yeah, I could see where you would feel the emotions get swept away with that. But yeah, I'm glad you felt it, even with your eyes closed. It was all worth it. That's it. Beautiful. Okay, I'm gonna take a sip here of milk. Wesley Switzer from Jalisco, Mexico. There's Wesley and Anji. Hi. Happy Easter weekend. Beautiful. And where's the puppy dog? Is he there? Right, yeah, he's relaxed. Oh, yes. He's really relaxed today. He's leading the way with this peace. Hi, David. It seems the belief in death is releasing and flipping the mind to see death as anything of the wrong mind. A perception of separation in any way. This world, all its forms. I cried as if I was crucified after they took Jesus down, and as they buried the soldier afterward. And after this, I felt great joy and felt as if light was pouring from my face and eyes. Surprisingly, after this, I came across what seemed like a block to going deeper. I have been seeing reflections of mothers with young children and have been experiencing guilt attraction. What came into the mind was the idea that living a truly helpful life is and was to have a child and love them with all my heart. If this be true, let me follow. If this is a block to going deeper with Jesus, please show me! Exclamation. I only want to follow. I want to play my part in the plan for salvation. Please help me to illuminate what is being shown here. Thank you for your love and support as one in truth. Blessings. Well, it's interesting when we start to feel drawn to particular things in the world. It seems like it's a very inward process of starting look, as I was sharing earlier on, about seeing everything, every scenario, every possibility, more in terms of symbols. So we could say, with the idea of having a child and loving a child, that's a symbol of something that's very deep in your heart. And obviously, with you and Angie, even having your dog is a beautiful symbol. I know you've shared that time in co-living at La Casa with Benito was very, very healing and very opening. And it's like that form, in one sense, has come back now with you. Is the ghost of Benito. he's, he's, he's everywhere. He's everywhere. He can't be stopped, especially in Mexico. He's named after the president of Mexico, so he takes that in like, I am everywhere. I'm named after the president of Mexico. But actually, we've had people over the years that have gone through those experiences where they do just like you're doing, where they have an idea about having a child and loving that child and nurturing that child. And then as they pray and meditate on it, they go back into the mind, because everything in form is symbolic. And that's how the Holy Spirit uses the symbols to take us toward the prayer of our heart. Because when we pray from our heart, we're praying for an experience. We're praying for that experience of love. And then the symbols are the form that we can sometimes accept something and allow it into our heart. So the symbols is what we've believed in, and the Spirit has to use those symbols. I had one friend who talked to me repeatedly about wanting a child, but she also talked to me about all the difficulties she's had and seemingly not being able to have a child. And then through a series of joinings, there were just miracles that came in that kind of opened the way for her to meet her life partner and to have a child. And yeah, she's stepped right into that. She really took on those symbols in a big way with a husband and now a child, a little boy. But also, I've seen sometimes where somebody would have that desire for a child, and then the more that they went in and prayed on it, and they went deeper inside, they could see that the desire for the child was the desire for intimacy, connection, and creative expression. And in one case, it was turned around to the point where instead of having a child, because her partner was not really feeling to have a child, playing the flute was the way it came out. It started off as the desire for having a child, but it turned into like a creative expression that brought such connection and intimacy, and it was getting more at what's underneath. That was the desire for creative expression, and it was just coming through the filter in that way. It started out in one way, but it went a completely different direction. So that's maybe something for you and Angie to pray on, in the sense that what Jesus is teaching us is you really don't ever ask, so to speak, for the specific, but you do have a prayer of the heart for something that you want to experience very deeply. And then the symbols that show up are orchestrated by the Spirit to help bring you to that inner experience you want in a way that you can accept. Because the Spirit knows the way. It's always the Spirit knows the way. And I see in my life, there's been things that I kind of was hoping for in the future a lot of times, but I would still have those experiences, but they would come about in ways that were very different than I ever imagined. I had to be just left with, wow, that's amazing. I don't know how I came full circle to have this experience, but I just followed what felt intuitively right. It is something that I think, like having a child, it has to be something that you really pray on, and you both would have to feel that very deeply. People say, is there anything extra good, bad, right, or wrong about children? But what I say is that all people are mirrors, so children are mirrors. That's the helpful interpretation, mirroring what's going on in the mind. And many people have told me that that's, when they start to see it that way, the difficulties and the heaviness and the limitations they've felt about parenting start to be retranslated into something that's helpful for their expansion, because they start to see the mirroring going on. And it's quite, parent-child mirroring can be very, very intense, but also very helpful from the higher perspective. So yeah, I would just continue to pray and pray together. Yeah. And for now, you've got the little puppy dog there. he's the child in the house right now. And I can see he looks very well loved. His face is showing us all. Extremely loved. Oh, beautiful. Thank you so much. Time to get up. Go over and see. Okay, and our last question is Marieke from Holland in the Netherlands. This is pray, listen, and follow. After the scene of the fish at the right side, it just hit me right there. My heart wide open, tears down my cheeks because I remember love. So grateful. Thank you, David. Thank you, Jesus, for these 8 weeks. Marieke, well, that's good. I know we're just starting the Mystical Christ Academy, so this was our first session included. So I'm just grateful that you had such an impactful, that was a very powerful scene. Pray, listen, and follow. Like, it doesn't get any more direct than that. And they were praying for happiness, but they also were praying for fish. And they got glee and happiness and a lot of fish to have a meal with Jesus. That's kind of neat. The resurrected Jesus still was eating fish too. That's kind of cool. So thank you, Marieke. Thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you to everyone. This was a very large combined group today. I think probably with the people from our centers and everybody online, we probably had over 150 or who knows how many. We all joined together today, saw a great movie, had a lot of miraculous insights today and lots of healing. So God bless you, love you.